Here I am, Sarah Wolf, calling the meeting to order. Virtual, oh my gosh, March 2nd meeting. Still says February on my notes. Thank you for everyone who's joining us. Thank you to 1623 Studios for posting the meeting. Pam, did you press record? Pam? I just want to make sure we're being recorded.
I don't know if Pam is on.
She was on.
I am right here. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I want to make sure that you are pressing record.
We are recording.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we are going to begin, as we always do, with public comment. We've had a lot of meetings, so I think everybody knows the drill by now, to please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you would like to make a comment, please put your full name and your town in the chat so that we can see who you are and where you're from. And I see that Caroline Weld has put her name in the chat. Caroline, would you like to go ahead, please?
Hi, Sarah. Hi, everybody. I am actually my daughter this evening. I'm reading a comment for her, which I had on my screen that just went away. So if you bear with me for a second. Okay, so she couldn't be here to read this. So my name is Caroline for Charlie Weld. She is a junior here at Manchester-Essex High School. I'm going to read it like she wrote it. I began doing theater at the high school as a freshman when I played Ariel in The Little Mermaid, when the musical theater program was revamped. I cannot express how much the experience affected me. It solidified my passion for performing and gave me a moment of calm in the storm that is being a teenager and dealing with everything that comes along with that. As COVID hit, all things that made being a teenager hard were amplified. Suddenly, on top of things like studying for AP exams, finals, friend drama, and daily homework, there was the added factor that we were isolated from everything and everyone. Amidst the chaos, we creative minds found ways to keep our minds churning and our hearts fulfilled, but that isn't necessarily sustainable. I'm here to reiterate what I hope you all recognize, the importance of the arts. Not only is this the thing many students wish to create a career out of, but it is also essential for preserving our mental well-being. It is the exact same as being on a field playing a sport. If those children who play athletics are supported and their mental health has been as a priority, it is extremely hypocritical and unfair to deny creative-minded students of the same opportunity. Again, this is my daughter. I have been participating in COVID-safe musicals since September. We follow all necessary precautions, and it has been a perfectly safe environment. I understand we cannot sing in the building, as said by the state, but that is not an excuse to deny us the joy of theater. There are numerous plays to choose from, all complying with the state's guidelines. Not only would this help with the mental space of the participants, but it would create new credits for those hoping to apply to colleges for the arts. As one of those people, denying me these last 2 years of theater is detrimental to my application process. I hope with all things considered, the school committee will follow their purpose, to attempt to satisfy the needs of all students. I understand that this is a large responsibility, but I truly believe this can happen and we can all bring the arts and the students that adore them back to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline, for Charlie. Thank you to Charlie for writing that. That was lovely. I just do want to point out, we have not up until this point been able to have singing in school due to the restrictive guidance from the state. However, today the state did issue new guidance, updated guidance on indoor singing. So I don't want to, I know Pam was very excited to announce this, but I'll just let you all know because I think that perhaps we have other people in the comment who might not know this, that the updated version of guidance came out today, which allows singing in school. So we will be digging into that and looking forward to welcoming singing back in school. So sorry if I stepped on your toes there, Pam. Okay, next we have Erica Spencer from Manchester by the Sea. Erica, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. I'd like to ask the school committee to consider reducing the social distancing requirement in a way that allows the administration to plan for a return to full in-person learning. I think all sides of this debate want the same thing, a safe return to school. Given the novelty of this virus, it's been difficult to predict what behaviors will and won't be safe. But after 12 months, there's a growing body of evidence to guide us. Transmission rates in schools remain low, even at less than 6 feet. Among others, the science journal The Lancet published an evaluation of 172 studies and found a significant reduction in risk with distancing of 3 feet, as long as baseline risk is low enough, which I believe it is in this community. In addition, I think we can maintain the 6-foot social distancing minimum for teachers while reducing the minimum required for students. This would allow us to fit more students back in the building while acknowledging that COVID poses a higher risk to most teachers than it does for most students. As a community, I think we can and should advocate for teachers to receive priority in the vaccine distribution process. And as we work toward the goal of in-person learning, it makes sense to try to understand how many kids we're really talking about. Because the fact remains that some students, for a whole variety of reasons, many of which have nothing to do with COVID, frankly, will choose to remain remote. Whether that's good or bad is a topic for a different day. But why don't we survey the community and ask how many students are committed to returning? Where our space is so critical, this information is imperative. Along these lines, when the school committee discusses school choice later tonight, I'd implore you to avoid introducing new students into the system until we determine how to fit the students we currently have.
School committee meeting.
I know this school committee has been faced with an impossible task. I really
They're going out to
appreciate the
school
completely
committee. They want them
inordinate
to vote
and unexpected
minimize
amount of
the
time you
distance
put
that
into
come
these
back to
volunteer
school.
positions. As you continue to consider
I
this issue,
cannot hear.
Yeah.
We need to mute some people, please. Thank you.
Should I keep going?
Sarah, it's Gail. I can't overhear the noise.
I'm muting Collins.
Thank you.
Erica, can I just ask you, is your name showing up in the participant list, or are you a caller?
Sorry, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. I put my name in the chat. Is that what you mean?
Yep.
She's not a caller.
She's not a caller. Okay. Okay. I just didn't want to mute Erica. Thanks. Sorry. All set.
So I'm not sure exactly at what point that got cut off. So I guess I'll just close in saying or reiterating that I know our school committee has been faced with an impossible task, and I appreciate the inordinate position and the unexpected amount of time you've all been forced to put into these volunteer positions. So as you continue to consider the issue of social distancing and how it relates to returning our students to full in-person learning, I just ask that you be guided by the science and the data and not fear and emotions, and that you give equal weight not only to the health risks posed by COVID, but the health risks posed by keeping our children out of school. Thank you.
All right, keep muting. Thank you, Erica. And I'm sorry that you got interrupted. And if everybody who's calling in can just please remember to keep yourselves on mute when you're not talking. And we will be discussing revisiting the social distancing guidelines is on our agenda for later tonight, which most of you probably know. Okay, Jory Everett, you're next.
Hi, and I am new to this system, so it would be helpful if you review the 3 minutes and how to do it. And I'm not sure then, my question is probably a little different than most, so I don't know how and when it gets addressed at the end.
Okay, I will be happy to review that, and then you can go ahead and make your comment. Okay, so our public comment, this is an opportunity to comment. It will not be a back and forth debate. Because this is our business meeting and we cannot get involved in a back and forth dialogue. So we do recommend that if people want a dialogue, they reach out to us via email and we will be happy to communicate with you that way. But please know that while we will not immediately be responding to your question, we are listening and paying attention to your concerns. And we just ask that you limit your comment to 3 minutes, and I will ring my bell after 2.5 to let you know that your time is almost up.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So my interest is in the Massachusetts Department of Education and DESE's literacy advancements. I haven't seen or heard anything about it, and I'm a parent with a child who has struggled with reading. So I'd really like to know what programs we're moving to head into structured literacy. If we have moved away from Fontes and Pinnell and the balanced literacy, it still says balanced literacy on our website. I'd like to know where parents can go, if kindergarten or up and coming preschoolers and kindergartner parents have been educated on the screening, what screening we're doing, and how that's being held accountable, and how we can be more collaborative with that going forward. If there's any oversight committee or a literacy steering committee, so everyone can work together. Partly, I'd like to know because I'm interested in supporting the teachers and the movement towards this, because I know how important it is from my son's personal experience. I have 2 sons in the high school currently. Hi, neighbors. My name's Jory, for everyone that I haven't seen or spoken to in a while. So I'm interested in, like, do all the kindergarten teachers have decodable books in their room? Do we have it in our libraries? What systems are we using? Are we using Flyleaf? Are they virtual, hybrid? Like, where are the gaps and how do we move this forward in the right way? I know you had some phenomenal speakers in June of 2018 that the educators all were able to listen to. I haven't seen any links to those. Emily Hanford, who is a goddess, if anyone is into the structured literacy thing, spoke on our stage, and I didn't even know that until just recently. So really just looking to move that forward into the forefront. It will help with special education and costs and budget, and let alone social emotional considerations for children in massive ways. And I have not heard a word about it. So that is my question, commentary, and I will send an email to follow up and find out more about it. I have been in touch with CPAC as well, but it didn't lead to any specific answers. So, thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Jory. We'll talk sometime because some of us have a big interest in literacy as well. Okay, moving on, we have Nate Kelleher.
My name is Nate Kelleher, and I'm a junior here at MERHS. I've been a part of this district's theater program since I was in middle school, beginning with the YMCA. During my first year of high school, our musical theater program was renewed and produced The Little Mermaid in the spring. I participated in the Drama Fest show that year as well. This was the first taste of any upper-level theater that I'd ever gotten. There were real costumes, real sets and props, and they were real and influential experiences. These experiences not only fortified a pre-existing passion for music and the arts, but it also introduced me to people that I may not have otherwise met. These experiences and friendships made high school that much easier. Once COVID hit in March, everything immediately closed down, forcing our show to shut down a day before we were supposed to go to a competition. Not only were we forced to learn exclusively through the computer due to the virus, but we were also completely isolated from our peers. And now the academic world has moved on and found new ways to take SATs or APs online. Organizations like DESE and College Board have created new ways to help students learn during this difficult time, and the athletics department has picked itself up in continued activities as well. But the arts remain on hold. I'm here to say what has already been said and what I hope you already recognize, and that's the importance of the arts. Not only are the shows and plays and concerts fun to perform and watch, but they're also a way that many students keep a positive mental well-being and social emotional health. Similar to how kids who enjoy English use their journalism, or how kids who enjoy athletics use their sport. I, for one, have felt that over the past couple of months, something has been missing. On top of not seeing my friends or family, I also couldn't be a part of the things that defined me in high school. That being music and theater. There have been creative solutions, but they've been temporary and unsustainable. I'm hoping that the school committee in the district allows for theater and drama activities to inside the school to resume once school is in session again. My class, the junior class, has missed almost an entire year of drama and theater, time that is crucial to those who wish to pursue drama in college or as a career in the future. As was said earlier, the state released newer and more updated guidelines that allowed for indoor singing and performing, and I hope that the school committee will attempt to bring back the activities that students love. Not only will this help ease the mind and bring joy to the students, but it will give those pursuing career paths more knowledge in their potential field or major. I do understand that this is a large undertaking, and it won't be an easy process, but I do believe that this can happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. It's always so wonderful to hear from our students. So thank you for sharing that with us tonight. Cheryl.
Hi there.
Hi.
I just wanted to encourage everybody, parents of special education students, to check your inboxes for a survey from CPAC, and that we have a meeting coming up on the 16th. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you, Cheryl. Sarah O'Leary. Sarah O'Leary, are you there to make a comment?
Is she a phone caller?
Sorry, I'm here. This is Sarah O'Leary. I was
That's
trying to figure out how to unmute myself.
No
Hi, everyone. I'm here tonight to make a statement from the Friends of the Manchester-Essex Performing Arts. And for those of you who don't know, we're a group of parents, family, and community members who want to support our children by fostering their passion for performing arts and giving them every opportunity to succeed. And the primary purpose of Friends of Manchester-Essex Performing Arts is to make sure that performing arts are a vital part of the Manchester-Essex Regional School District, as well as the communities of Manchester by the Sea and Essex, Massachusetts as a whole. So just going to read a position statement. Is the position of the Friends of the Manchester-Essex Performing Arts that the arts are a vital piece of a thriving and robust K-12 educational experience. Numerous studies support the notion that students who are involved in the arts have better attendance, fewer behavior problems, and increased performance in reading and math. A school that limits students' access to learning about and participating in the performing arts is also potentially limiting those students from fully engaging in their education. Up to this point, the Manchester-Essex Regional School Districts, in compliance with the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, has not allowed the student group to sing indoors. We do not fault the district for following the state guidelines. In fact, we appreciate the efforts and care that have gone into making our schools safe during this unprecedented time. However, many in the community are dismayed at the apparent discrepancies in allowing indoor sports such as basketball and not allowing the choruses to practice within the school walls. There are differences between the two types of activities and that we may be trying to compare apples with oranges. However, the perception is that much more attention and allowances have been given to the apples than the oranges, if you will, favoring one group of students over another. We are happy for the sports that have been able to run and especially excited that they have run relatively incident-free. We believe that with similar restrictions and precautions, indoor singing can also successfully occur. This time of COVID-19 has been difficult for all, including the students within our district. Many argue that students need to have sports occur for their mental health. Activities like chorus, musical, sound waves, and others the like provide the same mental and emotional lift for our students and should be valued in ways similar to sports activities. Recently, DESE has followed in the footsteps of over half of the other states' education departments, including those of the most Massachusetts neighboring states, in allowing indoor singing. We strongly encourage MERSD to do all it can to make this become a reality in all 4 of our schools. Our students deserve the opportunity to do what they love with all of its potential benefits. And deserve our continued action to make their school experience the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, well, now that we have new guidance, hopefully we can get moving on that. Shoshi.
Hi. On the
Hi.
same topic. How are you, Sarah?
Great.
So this is a very different statement than I had planned to read, than the one I had planned to read.
Last name, please.
Sure.
Last
Shoshi
name.
Star Collins from Manchester. Okay. So we got word last night that DESE had changed their guidance and allowed for indoor singing. So we are thrilled. It has been a long 12 months minus 2 weeks without performing arts indoors or face-to-face with teachers. I am now asking that you, school committee members, Superintendent Bowden, principals, and all music, band, performing arts teachers work swiftly to be sure that students can be in person with their teachers singing and performing. The inequities between athletics and performing arts have been apparent. Our athletic director is a half-time salaried benefited faculty position, half-time for extracurriculars. We do not currently have a director of performing arts. Performing arts includes all music classes, K-12, chorus, band, music theory classes as part of our education program, and extracurriculars like sound waves and musical theater. This is a big hole in normal times, and it's an even bigger loss at times like these. I'm sure the athletic director was swamped in August and September working to coordinate with principals and the league as to how to get sports up and running. We don't have that key director to help right now, so I'm asking you, the school committee members, Superintendent Bowden, principals, and all performing arts teachers to work hard to be sure that performing arts classes and extracurriculars run with teachers face-to-face and off Zoom. We don't have the space isn't an acceptable option. We don't have time this spring to pull it off isn't an acceptable option. Currently, our memorial students see their PE teacher twice a week in the gym. They meet with the music teacher on Zoom, whether they're in school or at home. Ipswich High School has had chorus happening outdoors much of the year and has held an indoor non-musical theater event in November. We don't have those things happening here. Our kids have lost out on so much. We can't help but believe that performing arts is not a priority here. Our family is asking you all tonight to please make performing arts a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Shoshi. All right, I think that's it for public comment. So Pam, we can go ahead and turn off the chat. And
Any callers, Sarah?
Yes, thank you. That was the next thing on my list. Are there any callers who are hoping to make a comment? I believe no. Do we have Lucas here for a student report?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent.
All right. So yeah, I just have a few things, but just to start, the freshman class elections took place last Friday. So congratulations to the newly elected officers of the class of 2024, Felani DeWitt, Finn O'Hara, Libby Mullery, and Alexander Brucker. Math team has their last and final meet of the school year this Thursday. Shout out to the Humanitarian League that is running a socks and underwear drive for Pathways for Children. And the spring sports season is starting soon as well this month, which is very exciting. And then, so aside from all that, in terms of like the hybrid feedback that I've collected since the last time we've met, I got the chance to talk to a few of my classmates who were hybrid, but then switched back to remote, kind of just to get their feedback and their reason for why they did that. And they basically just told me that like to them, they thought that the pros of being remote kind of outweighed the pros of being in person. And for some students, they felt more productive at home than they did in person. However, safety concerns was actually not part of the reason why they switched back, but it was a reason for why students who are currently remaining remote are choosing to continue to stay remote. One of my classmates told me that regardless of the safety precautions that the school is taking, she still feels like there's a risk of being in the building, which there is because, you know, there's simply no way for safety policies to be perfectly and consistently carried out. Other students, this was actually a pretty common response, but they felt like they truly learned better at home than in person and being hybrid. One student also told me that the in-person social interaction wasn't really something that she felt like she needed, which is definitely something that it's definitely not a common feeling, I feel like, amongst students, but I guess it's the case for a few of them. So kind of like overall, it seems to me at least that for the most part, students who switched back to remote from hybrid didn't find safety to be a concern for them. it wasn't a reason for why they switched back. But for students who never went in person and have always been remote, safety does seem to be a concern, and part of the reason, or 100% of the reason, why they don't want to switch to hybrid. But then again, regardless of whether a student views a safety concern as part of the reason, 100% of the reason, or not a reason at all as to why they don't want to switch to hybrid, you still have like all of the other reasons that I mentioned before. So like I said before, the fact that some students truly feel like they learn better at home, they're more comfortable, the fact that they don't have to wake up as early because they don't have to do the things that they would if they were going in hybrid. And then again, just the fact that a few students don't feel like they need that in-person social interaction that hybrid offers. And so that kind of coupled together as a whole is obviously going to be more appealing, right? And so that's kind of like the reason why I think personally why students who are currently remaining remote will continue to stay remote, and why some students who were previously hybrid, switched back to remote.
Thanks, Lucas. Does anybody on school committee have a question or a comment for Lucas?
I do, Sarah.
Yes.
Hi, Lucas, it's Shannon. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for following up with this information. So I had one question for you. As you were talking to people, some of the feedback we had heard along the way was that some of the kids were staying remote because their friends were not in their cohort.
Right.
Had you been hearing any of that?
Yeah, actually a lot. That was honestly one of the reasons as to why that I heard why students were staying home. It's because their friends aren't in their same cohort, and just in general, like there's a lack of students going back. And so, one of my friends, he was like the only student that actually, well, the only student in his class that went back hybrid. And so, yeah, he kind of just felt like alone, and so that's why he switched back to remote.
So in your professional student opinion, if everybody went back full time, you think that, or if the ability were to return full time 4 or 5 days a week, do you think a lot of kids would come back?
Definitely, yeah. I feel like if the majority of students, or if like all the students return back, then yeah, everyone would be encouraged to go back as well because their friends are returning. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your research and your candor.
Of course.
Agreed. Thank you, Lucas. All right, I skipped my report. I'll do my report. I do have a few things to say. Thanks again to everyone who's joining us tonight. There's been a lot of action since our last meeting. As of last week, our K-2 students are now in school for 4 days a week, joining our pre-K students who have been in person since the very beginning of the school year. I spoke with the elementary school principals today, and I'm delighted to say that the transition has been very smooth. Tonight, we will be discussing a potential revision of the 6-foot distancing. At this point, we have some solid data, as well as new recommendations from the CDC regarding operational strategies for schools regarding phased mitigation, so we feel that it is time to bring this discussion to the table. I continue to be amazed by the resilience of our students, families, faculty, staff, and administrators as we make the best of a difficult year. Today, I spoke with a parent of a 14-year-old 8th grader who manages their own remote learning as well as monitoring 2 younger siblings while both parents are at work. These kids are knocking it out of the park, and I am hopeful that we will be able to increase the amount of in-person time for all our students so that we can get everyone back to some sense of normalcy. Meanwhile, in order to ensure the health and safety of our students, teachers, and communities, we need to maintain all of our current mitigation strategies. These include the correct use of masks, hand washing, cooperating with contact tracing, daily use of the MedBot reporting, and participation in the recently implemented pooled testing, currently available for middle school and high school students. I hope that we can all work together for the good of all of our students, and I'm looking forward to tonight's discussion. And now we will move ahead with our meeting, beginning with our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we are looking for a motion to accept the warrants numbers 1034 and 1035 and the minutes from February 2nd.
So moved.
I'll second. Thank you for reading out the numbers, Sarah.
I'm very proud of myself for having those on my paper. We need to do a roll call vote. So Annie?
Cameron, yes.
Is there any discussion on these? Okay. Annie?
Cameron, yes.
Shannon?
Erdman, yes.
Matt?
Arrington, yes.
Teresa?
Whitman, yes.
Ken?
Warnock, yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So the consent agenda is passed. It looks like we perhaps have some subcommittee reports. Do we have one from elementary facilities?
It's on time on budget. I think we have a meeting next week.
Finance?
Yes, I believe that, gosh, it's been so long. We had a meeting, was it last Friday or 2 Fridays ago? Anyway, the upshot was basically to kind of have a powwow and figure out what the agenda might look like for our all board summit. And the idea behind the all board summit was to basically get all of the boards in both towns together, together on Zoom, together as it were during COVID, to figure out a path forward in terms of the budget. And it's, the road has kind of come to a fork. Whether or not we take the fork that a typical district, which grows, 3.5 to 3, anywhere from 3 to 4%, 3 to 3.5% as all districts grow yearly, whether or not we can live within the confines of 2.5. And if that is where the will is, what would that look like to our program going forward? Or the other path is to continue to support growth at about 3.5%, which would require either small overrides as we move forward or larger overrides spaced out a little bit further in time. So that's what we're all trying to get together, both towns, to try to figure out what the will is and the direction we want to take. So some pretty heavy stuff. And I would encourage all of you who are listening, you come to our meetings, which is great. We love to hear what you have to say, and we need to hear what you have to say. But we're usually singing to the choir. We're usually on the same page. So I would urge all of you, when these decisions come forward, it's not just the school committee making these decisions. We have to make decisions in the realm of the financial health of both towns. And it's critical that you make your wishes known to your selectmen and your boards of finance. That's basically, kind of what it comes down to. So that's my little soapbox for now, and my report on the finance committee. Thanks.
Also, we need people to run for school committee in both towns.
Yep.
Yes, we've got positions open. I believe somebody pulled papers in Essex, but we've got a position open in Manchester. Mine.
Yep. Are we solid on the March 11th all boards meeting? Pam, is that scheduled for the 11th?
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
And that'll be posted
posting on Friday after our meeting.
Thank you.
I don't believe that the policy committee has met. And I can tell you that the negotiation team continues to meet weekly with our meetup leadership. And and Pam, I turn it over to you.
Great, thanks. And I'm going to take my report in 2 pieces tonight. I have some general updates that don't have anything to do with COVID and hybrid. And I'll save the hybrid report as a preface to our discussion on social distancing. So really just some good news about things moving forward and thinking about next year and post-COVID and what life will be like for us. I know I've mentioned quite a few times over the past few months that at this time last year, we were launching our strategic planning initiative, and our goal was to utilize the draft vision of the graduate as a driving document to kind of formulate our high-level district goals for I think we were calling it Vision 2034. So what will a graduate know and be able to do as a result of 12 years of education in the Manchester-Essex system? That came to a screeching halt when we, I think it was March 13th, shut down and began the journey that we've been on with COVID. So exciting that we're reviving the effort, and we have a very ambitious timeline that has us kicking off tomorrow night with our steering committee. And we'll be posting the steering committee members up to a page. Just want to talk to them about what they're comfortable having posted online in terms of directory information. But we have a great team. We have a parent representing, not representing the school, but we have a parent volunteer who has a student in each of our school buildings. We have a teacher from each of the school buildings. We have 2 representatives of the administrative team and 2 members of the school committee who sit on it. So it's a good sized group with a lot of perspective. And we're going to be working with the Creative Ed Foundation, who will be training us on creative problem solving. So they'll be taking us through a protocol and helping us learn about one another, how we work, how we see things, and then steering us in the right direction of data analysis. So throughout March, we're going to be doing some training and using a document review to test out our skills on analysis and synthesis. As you know, over the past few years, we've been collecting several third-party reviews that have given us a sense of what our strengths and weaknesses are in the district. So I think we'll be looking to those documents for our SWOT analysis. We will be reviving the survey. We did have one out last year pre-COVID. We're going to dust that off, take a look at it, see if the steering committee thinks we need to make any adjustments to it, and we'll be getting that out the week of March 29th. World Cafe focus groups. So post-survey, we'll be hosting several World Cafe focus groups. So the concept behind these focus groups is to purposely not go to different interest groups, but to bring cross interests together so that the focus groups in and of themselves are a learning experience for people. So we're hearing not only one particular constituent group set of interests, but we're hearing vertically, horizontally, and whether you're an arts parent, a special education parent, or athletics parent, there's value in all of us hearing and finding common ground in where we need to grow. And then all of this is going to culminate in May, at the end of May, with a convening of the school committee, the administrative team, and the steering committee, where the steering committee will share its recommendations for actionable goals. And we will draft those goals through a facilitated process, again, with the creative ed team. So really excited. We should be able to walk into summer with that very high level document. And remember, the strategic plan encompasses the missions, the visions, the mission, the vision, the goals, and the vision of the graduate. That then becomes our guiding document when we get into more of the nitty gritty planning. And that will come through the district improvement plan and school improvement plans. But we want to tether those to something and make sure we're not going off in a million different directions. And it will be that strategic plan overarching document that does that. So I know I can speak for the admin team, or we are excited to be looking to the future. Really, it's coming at a great time because we've learned a whole lot this year that I don't think we ever imagined we would. And I think we've stretched ourselves, and it's been, you know, teachers and principals are working incredibly hard, and people are exhausted already, and there's still a long way to go. But I think what we've learned is that we can change quicker and more effectively than we think we can sometimes. So I think with this behind us, we are in a great position to start to plan and grow the future of the district. Let me just bring up the next slide. The next few things are just some general updates that I haven't brought forward recently, haven't been brought forward in the last meeting. So things that had kind of come across my plate, questions that I've been asked. Sarah had asked me about the Student Opportunity Act. I know she was speaking to some friends in Hamilton, and they were talking about the fact that they were discussing the Student Opportunity Act at school committee. For a quick refresher, and we can plan some time for the next meeting if people really want to go into it. We did our Student Opportunity Act work through our budget process last year. So if you remember, throughout December and January, we were tracking our potential financial gain out of the reworking of the Chapter 70 and student funding formulas. That work had begun several years earlier with some recommendations to the legislator, and just the acknowledgement that the Chapter 70 formula was sorely outdated. It didn't account for current healthcare growth rates, for special education, out of district tuition and transportation growth rates. So the long and the short of it is, well, the outcome document, the outcome SOA Act really targeted low-income, high-need districts with Chapter 70 dollars. Locally, we were looking to potentially benefit from having some circuit breaker out-of-district monies flow to us to offset our out-of-district transportation. In our budget last year, we had them estimated to be approximately $50,000. We didn't realize student opportunity last year. We're hopeful that it will come to be this year. The Student Opportunity Act, one of the provisions is that districts should submit a plan as to what they would do with the monies that they received. So we had districts that were receiving well over $1.5 million into the tens of millions of dollars through Chapter 70 reorganization. We are considered the short form district, which is you're under $1.5 million, and we are way under $1.5 million. So as I said, we were earmarking $50,000 to come our way through some reimbursement for out-of-district transportation. They held off on having us report our intentions last year because, again, COVID hit. So town meetings were pushed back. We didn't have a state budget, and the dollars weren't coming. They did ask us over the winter. So I think the deadline was sometime in late January, early February, for us to just submit what our intent was for use of the money. For us, the actual dollars went to decrease the amount of budget gap that we had and actually prevented us from having to, make any additional cuts. They also asked what you would do with those dollars to address the needs of your high needs learners and potentially students who weren't excelling at MCAS. So jury asked the question out front, what about literacy? Well, we did identify the literacy program as a way in which we are trying to address students who have high needs, and we were tracing that back to the data that we see at MCAS. So that's kind of our curriculum investment, and in the plan it says clearly that we would have funded that regardless of SOA dollars because we wouldn't have enough SOA dollars to actually fund the initiative, but we did account for that. That being said, I thought it was a great opportunity to answer Jory's question, and I know that we're happy to put literacy back on the agenda at any point for an update because we have undertaken quite a bit of analysis and work in how we can move to a science-based approach in that area and more appropriately serve all of our learners. So that's just a little bit on the SOA Act. If we want to do more on it, Avi and I can get together. We can give you an analysis of the dollars, but really we are not a district that's going to be a large recipient. In other good news, Holly Babson and Tricia Puglisi served on an EAS panel today for social emotional learning. I think they were there with our partners at Ruler, and it was a New England-based panel. They did a fantastic job. I got an opportunity to see a bit of that. Pre-K and K registration is underway, so we are ready to go for next year. We are very optimistic about hitting our pre-K goal and having both those classrooms filled. And the building project in Essex Playground are on schedule. And those will be, I think the number was 28 weeks to turn over on the building project. And I know we have a full Essex Playground update next week. So I share these just to say there's still a lot going on in the district that's not about, not about hybrid and COVID, but our number one mission is getting more kids back to school. And we'll talk about that shortly. I'm going to transition the end of my brief report here with an acknowledgement that the other great work that's going on in the district that probably would be our centerpiece this year if we weren't dealing with the COVID issue is the K-12 diversity, inclusion, and anti-racist work. This is in support of the anti-racism resolution that the school committee passed over the summer. So what we're going to do is two parts. Julie's just going to give you a very brief overview of what we have going on in the curriculum and training bucket. And then Craig Maccarelli is here, and he's going to give you an overview of what SCAR, our student anti-racism group, has been doing since the beginning of the year. So I'm going to kick it over to Julie. And Julie, you can start talking while I bring up the slide.
Okay, great. I will do that. And I did get the words, keep it brief, so I will do that. Although we can certainly go more in depth in the future when we have an intense agenda. But what I did on this slide was just really summarize a lot of the work that is going on in the district that so many people have taken a part in. It's certainly hard to categorize it all and put it all in just one bucket. So I tried to just separate a few things out for people to think about. For the district collaborative and training side of this slide, what I wanted to do is just summarize for you some of the work that we had started doing over the summer when we were tasked with really taking a deeper look at the work that we're doing across the district. We had a great group of teachers who came together and shared a lot of feedback and resources and things that they had been thinking about working on with students. And these groups of people have gone on to do amazing things in the schools that this slide just does not do justice to. So we can certainly, like I said, talk more in the future. We've joined the Affinity Network in Beverly. We have also sent teachers this summer to the National Anti-Racism Teach-In, which I know they are dying to talk about. So there's some really great resources that we're able to cull together and work on through our departments with that type of work. Just such a huge wealth of information and knowledge. And so we're hoping to bring that more forward as we move into more concrete look at our curriculum. Sorry, I'm breaking up a little bit. Our program that we just created will be attending the ECLC SEED project, Critical Conversations About Race and Equity. And this is a 5-part series that will allow us to really think critically across each of the grade levels with how we can look more deeply and more intently at the work that we're doing with students and really have deep conversations around race and equity and what that means to us as a school system and how we can build better programs for students and teachers moving forward. On a curriculum focus at the middle high school, I just really summarized this, and Craig's going to talk a lot more about SCAR. You're going to love his presentation. He's so full of life. He has a lot of great resources to share and information. At the social studies level, just to be a little bit more concrete about what's happening curricular-wise, we had been tasked with aligning to the new standards for social studies, and that work has been underway for the last few years, I would say, in the social studies department at the high school at least. But also in the 8th grade, we've worked really hard. Joanne McWhorter has worked really hard to organize around the new civics curriculum, and she's doing great work. I know we'd love to hear from her as well with her work in that regard. We have a lot of curricular units for ELA that touch really deeply on a lot of the topics that we're learning about through these critical conversations and the trainings that we're going to. And a lot of music presentations as well. And so I'm happy that we have our band director who is also working with us through the ECLC Seeds project. So we're working across content as much as we can to develop good programs for students. At the elementary level, we've had teachers participating in staff book clubs and shared reads across the schools, teacher read-alouds that they're participating in with some really great topics, classroom celebrations for Black History Month, and tons of multicultural work through diverse literature units that our amazing librarian has been putting together for years and is very deeply involved in projects like that, bringing them across the schools through grades K through 5. So that's just a 30,000-foot view of the work that's been going on, but I will tell you that teachers have been doing amazing things for years, and I know that we would love to be able to bring their work forward to show you. That's my piece.
So we'll throw it to Craig.
Okay.
Thanks, Pam. Hi, everybody. As weird as it seems to say, nice to see everyone through a computer screen. I'll keep saying it. Hope things are a little bit more normal. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. Excited to talk about SCAR. It's crazy to think that we're I don't know, 3/4 of the way or so through a school year already, and we've been working on this since October. But we've done a lot of really cool things in that time, given the atypical school year we've had, obviously, and trying to establish a really passionate group of kids in a remote environment. It's been a challenge in that way, but I feel like we've adapted really well. So I was part of some of the conversations over the summer around these things, and so I was super excited when Patricia Puglisi had reached out to me, asking if I'd be willing to kind of oversee this group. It's definitely an area for me that is of high passion and just personal a personal aspect to it for me too. Outside of professionally, I'm married to a Black woman. I'm the dad to two mixed race boys who, I've had to have some pretty difficult conversations with the news and the things that we've seen in the past few years, especially. So I was absolutely thrilled to join in on this work and work with these super passionate students. And so we were finally able to kind of coordinate schedules and meet in mid-October. We started off with 6 students who were with us, one who has since transferred to a different school. But we had a core group of 5 or 6 members who we wanted to start small, given that it was a new group. We wanted to kind of keep it small, so we really try to establish our base and our foundation and what we wanted to accomplish together. And I think that was the right move. It worked out really well. We were able to have pretty intimate conversations around the things, the topics that we started off with. And we used that really powerful letter that the group wrote with some alumni students. They had written to the school committee over the summer, in the aftermath of George Floyd and other horrific crimes in the news. And so I met with the girls who are still the group of girls, all girls, as much as I've tried to garner some male interest. We're not there yet, but I think eventually we'll get there. But we have 5 girls who had all these great ideas and all these passionate ideas and thoughts. And so I figured we could start at least with one source, and we kind of spent our first few meetings through November 5th, really dedicating the time to try to work through that letter, and I really wanted to get a feel for what it was that they felt behind these things, and the letter had a lot of great information, but things that they've heard from their peers, feelings that they had, things that they'd seen in the news, on social media. And so those were really helpful conversations to guide our initial our initial work. And I think for me too, it was very helpful to have the chance to try to kind of, as much as we want the passion and the disrupting kind of mentality, also tempering some of the passion sometimes and making sure that our arguments and thoughts were thought out and well planned. And so, we went through and talked about some of those things, and I tried to be informative with them around things like, around discipline and the school resource officer and things like that, some of school laws and things that may restrict us. And it really set us up well to kind of move forward after November. And so right at the beginning of November, we decided that, many groups, that we wanted to create a strong mission statement. And so we took time to do that collectively, and we came up with our mission is to further the diversification of our school culture. We aim to build a community where equity, access, and equality is present and sustainable for all. And so that's obviously a lofty goal, and we're really early on in this work. But I think that's part of this work and this type of advocacy around anti-racism and equity and equality, is that some of this is going to be lofty, and they are, there's contentious issues and things are going to get tough, but these kids were more than excited to get involved and do that work. So we felt this was a strong mission statement, and that's what we're sticking with. And hopefully, we keep working towards these things and this overarching goal. And so as we moved on, we meet weekly on Wednesdays during U Block, and that's been the case since October 15th. A lot of our meetings start off with the Anti-Defamation League. ADL has this great series of short articles that for students and teachers called Table Talk, and we'll use a lot of our meetings to talk about some of those things. A lot of the training that I've tried to find, some really great free resources. A lot of this work is done by just really bringing the conversation to the table and having those difficult conversations. And I especially wanted them to be comfortable doing that within our group and our setting, so that when we hopefully do branch out to a broader audience or community or groups, more diverse groups, people with different perspectives, that we can have intelligent conversations and informed conversations. And that's gone really well. And so when December came around, we kind of used that we knew we were going to be doing a Martin Luther King Jr. Presentation for Martin Luther King Jr. Day in January. And so we took that time to really kind of dig into some civil rights history. And it was really fun to be with a group of kids who was genuinely interested, having taught history in middle school before. I know that sometimes it can be pulling teeth, but for these kids, they wanted to be there and they were into it. So it was really cool to go through that and see the profound kind of looks on their face as we would go through, some of the tough information involved with these things. And that helped us prepare to present, to create our presentation, which we did, obviously taking a break with winter break. And we came back, and that was kind of our first opportunity to sort of put ourselves out there with a presentation or sort of an action. And we wanted to, we put a nice message at the end of that video to try to elicit some more attention. And at that point, we had sort of decided that we were probably comfortable to start trying to add some members if there were more people interested. We had felt that in that time from October to December, January, that we had established enough of ourselves and our identity that we could take on more members and bring some more ideas into play. So that went really well. Right before our Martin Luther King presentation on January 18th, the week before, I was actually able to, Pam, I don't know if you have the second slide, please. Thank you. I was fortunate enough to meet with Dr. Kanan McKenzie of the NAACP North Shore branch, who I believe had touched base with Sarah, and that was how she got in touch with me eventually. And she was excellent. Our schedule was finally coordinated in January, and I was able to talk with her for about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, and just really informative discussions from somebody who has been in the throes of this type of work. And we were able to really have some great discussions around shared experiences, the work that she had done, and selfishly for us, it was definitely for some guidance. And what we could do, especially from our perspective in our community, a community that obviously isn't as diverse as some surrounding communities, and that's going to be part of the work, is connecting with those people. So it was really helpful to get her perspective, and she was also, more than willing to allow us to be involved with activities that the NAACP North Shore branch was going to be putting on. Actually, right after we had met, there was going to be a student-led discussion on the book and movie, The Hate You Give. And she allowed me to invite our students, and it was an evening activity. And for anybody who hasn't seen or read that, or seen that movie or read that book, it's a very powerful modern take on the issues that we see in the news. And it was an incredible film and book. And so that was a really cool opportunity. And we knew that we were going to be, hopefully Dr. McKenzie will actually be coming to one of our meetings sometime soon. She teaches a lot and has a tough schedule, but she's going to try to get there. I'll go back to that group because we have a really cool opportunity coming up. But in between mid-January and February, mid-February, we obviously, like many other things, decided that creating an Instagram profile or social media presence was definitely going to be a huge part of our work to spread our messages, and it's just a huge part of any advocacy work anywhere right now is capitalizing on the social media presence. The alumni group who was part of the original discussions had already had a page, and we certainly didn't want to ask them to delete their page or kind of take their page over for them. So they have their own alumni page now. We've taken over the current students' Instagram handle. We're up to 100 followers as of today. That generated in the past few weeks has generated about 6 new members for us as we post. We try to update daily, with the stories and trying to share we follow a lot of the great networks and pages that are well established organizations. NAACP Boston, Anti-Racism Center, Civil Rights, Black Lives Matter, and then there's some other really awesome social media personalities and influencers, Check Your Privilege and The Conscious Kid, that just share wonderful and informative information all the time. They offer trainings and conferences and virtual talks, some really amazing resources just through the social media alone, and it's been really helpful. And we want our social media to also reflect. We're going to sort of try to have a theme every month that we're really working towards, and whether that means eventually down the line, whether that's fundraisers and donations, the messages that we're putting out. Obviously last month was Black History Month, so that was the primary focus of our content last month, was sharing messages about Black history, important BIPOC authors, educators, filmmakers, people who have contributed to the world and our society and in this country. And then this month, with Women's History Month, just starting here in March, that's going to be our theme this month. We made a post today, sharing things like BIPOC women's podcasts and books and movies, really just trying to spread that word and use that as a social media presence to really, expose people and especially students in our community who maybe otherwise would have a tough time finding some of these resources and things to educate themselves and make themselves aware of some really important work going on. So that's gone really well. And then, so with February being, again, the Black History Month and that being our focus, It was excellent to hear from Dr. McKenzie again, who had reached out to me about a founding member of the NAACP North Shore branch, who is a current high school student, is organizing her own student advocacy organization in partnership with the NAACP North Shore branch, and she wants all of our SCAR kids to join up and be a part of that work. And this was some of the stuff we talked about way back in October that we were hoping would really come up. The ability to really get out there and go beyond our community and bring some of that great stuff back to our community to hopefully help to elicit and create some of the change that we want to see in our community and school community. And so I'm hoping that that's going to start up this month as well. I've just recently put the kids in touch with the young lady who reached out to me, and hopefully I know a few of them expressed absolute interest in it and we're thrilled. So I'm really excited about that. I think that these are going to be the little things that really become huge things for us moving forward. And that leads in, where we are now and moving on. We're just getting into our Women's History Month theme. This week we'll meet tomorrow. A big part of our we want to try to plan for maybe a small fundraiser to start. We were thinking of even seeing if we could find a way to mass produce some SCAR masks or something like that to fundraise. We have a few different ideas for potential donees. But one of the pages that we follow on Instagram, The Conscious Kid, has an anti-racist children's book education fund where they will actually, if you donate to them, they'll send a box of anti-racist children's books to teachers and classrooms. So that's one idea, but we're excited to start doing that type of work and really expanding our horizons outside of just our meetings at school. I'm glad that I'm kind of fulfilling a promise that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to fulfill to the kids. I promised them that at some point I would get them out of at least a few classes to do some of this work. And so we're going to a great conference on March 24th, 2021. The MSAA, the Massachusetts School Administrators Association, is putting on this great conference that as of right now has over 40 school districts from across the country. It's called the Connections Conference, Listen, Learn, Act, fighting for justice in our school communities. So I'm really excited to bring at least a few of these kids to this conference. And this is going to be sort of, I think for many of them, we have a young group, especially, that I think this will be their first, journey into doing things like this and really getting out there and having conversations with people outside of their community. So really exciting things. I'm thrilled with what we've been able to get done and accomplish in the short time that we've had in a very strange school year. So again, thank you for having me, and I'm excited for the work we're going to do moving forward.
Thank you, Craig. That's a lot of work, and we really appreciate it. Does anyone on the school committee, I saw Annie raising her head before. Does anybody have a question for Craig?
Hi, I have questions for Craig and for Julie.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that at some point we can schedule some time to actually run through a process of kind of what is the process that we're using to look at content and how we teach, and see where we have some vulnerabilities or weaknesses and how we're going to address those. I think that also should be part of that strategic plan. I think this is big work. I think we also have some communication to do, just because we have some folks in our towns who don't necessarily value this work and think it's an issue. And I think that we could do some outreach with the two towns to talk about systemic racism and some of the things that we could be doing at the town level that would support the work that you're doing. And then I was, so those are just my kind of Julie questions. And I'm hoping we can do it before May 10th when I'm leaving. And then SCAR, I'm sad to see that only 5 students are participating. And how can we, I mean, I know that those are, that's your, your choir, right? But the rest of the population also needs to kind of be exposed to conversations that, if they go on to higher learning, they're going to have uncomfortable conversations, and they need to know how to talk about it in a responsible and open-minded way to kind of be able to see. And I think that, I know that's the work you're trying to do, is to like make kids see and have them be able to talk in a responsible and thoughtful way. And I wonder how you can get into classrooms and maybe just begin that kind of work, because it's they're going to be doing it in college. And I know from my own kids' experience of some really fractious, fraught situations where Title IX, things came up, and, we have to prepare these kids for, the academic environment they're going to be walking into. So these are just thoughts I've had as I'm listening to, but thank you so much for this work. It's so important. And I at work am doing the same kind of work, and it's very humbling, because you realize how much is built into the system that you don't see, and then all of a sudden it hits you, and you think, oh, I should have seen this years ago. So thanks for the work that you're doing. Those are just some thoughts I had.
Annie, I think as we craft the vision of the graduate in our large overarching goals, some of that more systemic stuff will find its way in there, and then get embedded as shorter term goals within the district improvement and then the school improvement plans.
Anyone else have questions for Craig or Julie? All right, I think you're off the hook. I won't pepper you because we have a big agenda tonight, but thank you so much for doing all that work. It's so important, and we're really glad to have you working with the kids.
Thank you.
But this was a
really happy to have
goal,
kids.
so we should have more conversations about this.
Yes.
Because this is big, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it.
You'd already discussed Craig coming back perhaps with some students at the end of the year. I think he referenced that. Which is fast approaching, believe it or not.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody. So Pam, you're back on. You've got a lot of things on your bullet pointed list.
Well,
there.
actually, the next one is the memorial proposal for the high school. This is Tricia and Mary Buckley Harmon. You have an overview in your packet, but they are here to give you to do the ask and answer any questions that you have.
Hey everybody, I'm here on behalf of Mary Buckley Harmon, and the ask is that we are looking to erect a bench in our orchard area outside of our school in memory of Gloria Tanner, who was a instructor in our school for 27 years. And we feel as though, given her length of service and her dedication to the district, that acknowledge that and her struggles that she had as she became ill.
All right. Is Tricia any more? Do you have any more about it, or do you just we got the proposal in our packets?
I can say that we have a picture of what the monument would look like. We also have approval from both Jason Waldron, the facilities director, and also from Keith Gray, who runs the orchard, and that this would be an appropriate placement of that statue.
All right. Thoughts from anybody?
I think this is a great idea. And you should also know that there is going to be a scholarship in Gloria's name through the Manchester-Essex Education Fund. We just have to get the details of that. So this is great. So do you want to make a motion to approve the request for the Gloria Tanner memorial in the school courtyard?
Yes.
I will second Erdman.
Awesome. Okay, so is there any discussion around this? I know we don't usually do memorials. Pam, do you want to give any history or thoughts on that?
Yep, the policy states there are no permanent memorials. So when we did the memorial for Joyce Swedberg, the agreement was, and what they're following suit here with Gloria is that they are movable memorials. So if there comes a time where we have to utilize the space in that courtyard, we don't have to destroy the memorial, we can simply relocate it. So I think that's why I bring it before the committee. It does meet everything that I read in the proposal. It meets the what's the word I'm looking for? It is not a permanent fixture of the building. It's not erected in a way that it can't be moved should a greater need come along. So I think it meets the bounds of the policy, but this is the formal process by which the ideas get vetted. So it's a public disclosure that the memorial is going to go into play. I think it's a wonderful idea.
I think it's a lovely idea too. Does anybody else have any discussion? Okay, then we'll take it by roll call vote. Annie?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you for working on that, Trish. That's going to be a really nice memorial to Mrs. Tanner.
Well, I really appreciate it.
All right, is it back to me? Okay, school choice. This should actually be, tonight is just the preliminary report on school choice to give you a sense of what our applicant pool looks like and what some of our challenges and considerations are in our decision-making process going forward. So coming up shortly on your screen is, and I'm not sure how great the quality of the picture is, so it's pretty small. But what you're going to see is we have currently 109 applicants for school choice positions that are yet to be identified. Of those applicants, we have 6 who are siblings. We always point out that what the sibling number is, because if we do choose to accept school choice at the grade level for which they're applying, these students have priority for acceptance. They don't go through the lottery, they're an automatic in. So I think we start every school choice analysis with the assumption that we'll be hopefully accepting at a minimum the sibling applicants. So when I started looking at the numbers and analyzing it, these are the things that we're going to be considering when we make our determination. First, I think we should probably look at a timeline for decision that brings us into our first meeting in April, in hopes that we have some clarity on where our budget process is going and what our opening of the school year will look like. So a quick overview, our current budget does include the replacement of 17 school choice graduates, which is $85,000. So if we're not able to realize accepting and placing 17 students, we would find that we have contributed to our already existing budget deficit. So our target number is 17, so we can ensure that we have that our school choice budget remains flat. So just very quickly, over the past, I would say 5 to 6 years, our goal has been not to necessarily grow school choice, but at least to hold it flat in the budget. And I think our target number has been 350 each year, which means our process is simply, as students graduate out, we replace those students with new entering students to hold that budget line flat. When that budget line goes down, that's a cost that's transferred directly back to the towns in the form of the assessment. So that kind of plays with our larger, not for discussion tonight, but our larger budget puzzle, which is if one of our revenue lines continually declines, that's going to continually push up the amount of money that the town needs to pay to support the schools. In a way, this is our biggest line, not in a way, this is our biggest line of revenue that comes in to offset the assessments. Again, 109 applicants, 6 siblings. So the puzzle we're trying to solve, or the problem we're trying to solve, is because it's contingent on the budget, because if we end up with some staffing reductions, whether through attrition or more specific, just to cut the budget to meet the assessment need, a staffing reduction is going to reduce the number of potential seats that we can take. So reducing staff limits our potential for taking in school choice. A loss of school choice creates a loss of revenue, which generates a need for potential additional cuts, which could be staff. So we have to be very deliberate in how and where we place students. And what we need to remember is taking school choice students is an obligation for the life of that student's education. So students who enter in kindergarten are students with us through grade 12. And if we experience any resident growth within that time period, we will have to add appropriate resources to manage that growth. So it's a little bit of a puzzle, and it's a bit of balancing anticipation of resident growth, which we think we're going to see with the opening of the new school. We know we have some housing development going on in both towns, so our resident enrollment numbers could be going up. So again, we want to be careful and model out where we place school choice students coming in. And then the other big thing that's out there is the COVID social distancing. We're going to have a discussion tonight, but we're not certain necessarily of what it's going to look like in the fall. So hopefully 17 students doesn't tip the apple cart too much if we place appropriately in the grade levels. But what we're seeing now in the discussions we've had to this point, we know 1 or 2 students can make the difference between the need to be at 6 feet or the need to be at 4.5 feet. So we want to make sure when and where we're taking students, we're not creating an enrollment issue that's going to bump up against our need to meet our social distancing guidelines and prevent us from being able to be in the building. So this is just a sense of where we are with class size. If you look to the right and see our enrollment numbers, and you'll see right now the only grade levels district-wide that are running below benchmark are 2 and 3. So that doesn't leave us a lot of target room for school choice. So we have a little bit of work to do to figure out what the recommendation will be on the grade levels. At the high school, the numbers trend lower, but it's also, as we've learned through the COVID process, that schedule, it's not as cut and dry as it is at the elementary level in terms of number of sections and students per section. So we can do a little digging there, but there might be some room at the high school going forward as well. So this is just to give you a sense of, again, the problem we're trying to solve, the work that we have to do, and I'm hoping you're okay with an April recommendation at that point, knowing a little bit better what our enrollment and our budget might look like for next year.
Sounds good, Pam. We look forward to that April recommendation.
Okay.
Shannon, do you want to say your thing about school choice?
Oh, you mean the little thing that Caroline and I have been saying for 8 years? If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on
So,
then?
Yeah, I don't think we have anything pressing on the budget, so I think we could push that off to just some general discussion at the end, maybe with school committee comment, because I think you all covered where we're at with the finance committee report with the all boards meeting.
Okay.
So if we would like to get into the discussion about social distancing, we can do that.
Let's move into that.
Okay. So this is also the first meeting of the month, so I'm going to give you a brief overview of the indicator report. I think that will help us with our social distancing discussion, because I think what we're seeing here in the indicators is part of the reason why we're going to be comfortable. I'm going to be very comfortable recommending to you that we move to amend the social distancing guidelines. So quick overview, the COVID metrics, great shape. Essex and Manchester are back to being in the gray. So we are where we were in the fall. And we are continuing to see no evidence of in-school spread. We're getting to that conclusion based on our data. If you look at the numbers, you're going to see that less than 1% of the students have tested positive to date. So this is, we began tracking the tracking COVID positives when we returned elementary students in October. So to this point, we've only had 10 students district-wide, and out of close to 1,300 students, that gives you less than 1%. The teachers are a little bit higher at 7.5%. What we know is that most of it has been contracted, or all of it, to our knowledge, has been contracted outside of school. And our data also shows that we have had 0 student to staff or staff to student close contact identification. So if you look at those numbers and you look at our chart, since we've been back mid-October through March, we do not have numbers that support the concern that by the virtue of coming to school, we're going to create a spreading situation. Where we see close contacts identified is all outside of school. So staff external close contact and student external close contact. So very comfortable in saying, as long as we're following our mitigation efforts, we're able to contain spread in school. Testing began. We've been working and talking about this since the onset of the year. It was part of our original indicators. So it began on the 23rd at the high school in talking with the team who implemented it, and that was Joanne and Tricia as the principals, in our super nursing team, Joanne, Cindy, and Donna. It took a lot of preparation to get your brain around it, but I think everyone felt very comfortable with the actual implementation, and that it went rather smoothly. We have 44% of the students participating and 97% of the staff. Our goal for both is 75%. And in our first round, we had no positive pulls. So we're hoping some of the conversation, like what we probably haven't answered well is, why are we doing the testing? I think some people instinctively get it. Others are still saying, well, what's the benefit of this? Things seem to be going well. Why do we need to do this piece too? Right now, we're at about 50% capacity overall, and about 25% when you look at the cohort. When we move our discussion on the 16th to talking about the middle high school, I think a discussion about bringing back more students may put a little bit more clarity around why the testing protocol will be important to us to manage that, should we choose to return more students to in-person at the secondary level. Elementary and district support staff are going to be phased in. So we started just with the middle high school. Over the next 2 weeks, the nurses will be fading in the remainder of the district-wide staff. And then the good news we got on staffing was that we will be receiving state funding through the 18th. So it's going to bring us right to April vacation. I'm predicting, I don't have any inside information, but I wouldn't be surprised that if the resources are available, they're going to continue this, because it's part of the mitigation efforts to support return to in-person. This is just the map of the region, and it's starting to look a lot lighter than it did a few weeks ago. So things are definitely improving. You'll see that of the Cape Ann League, the majority of our partner communities are in the yellow, with green and gray growing every day. So things are moving in a positive direction. And then just finally, staffing, it's the same thing I tell you every month. It's the same thing that was an issue prior to COVID, but just a bit more exaggerated now. Subs are hard. The principals do their utmost to make sure every class is covered, and they use a lot of creative methods, and the staff really step up to help when we just can't find anybody. So it's going to continue to be a challenge for us, but we'll do our best to meet it. And Sarah did steal my thunder. This is the most exciting thing that's happened in a long time. We are ready to move forward because of the DESE guidelines that came out yesterday. I even got an email from Aaron Kirchner in Essex, because they interrupted their health meeting today with the announcement that this had been approved. So everybody is super excited to have the guidance that we need to move the ball forward. So to everyone who spoke at the beginning of the meeting, we hear you. We agree with you, and I think we're super excited to be able to have the documents in place and the guidance in place that we need to move the program forward. I see Tricia jumped on. I know they'll be on this, so plans will be rolling out soon. Fall athletics is underway too, and as we know, they've had great advocacy from the outset. And I can't help but say it is kind of nice to see. I mean, it was a beautiful week before the turn in temperature. We had a beautiful couple of days, and there was a lot of life out and around the building. Sun late in the day. It's almost felt like fall. So keep that in mind as we move to the recommendation. And just finally on the budget, I think we're in better shape than I had anticipated. We're still on track for about $1.5 million. Avi is fine tuning the numbers so we come with specifics on the total COVID budget cost, and we'll bring that on the 16th. But what I've been tracking closely is The staffing cost, I was projecting a potential of up to $300,000 in additional staffing costs to bring back the middle high school to hybrid. Only 109 materialized. So our total budget right now for personnel costs to manage COVID only is $436,000. So not fantastic, but about 2/3 less than the worst case scenario that I was projecting. So all in all, I think what we're seeing is the indicators are showing that the time is right to start to talk about increasing the number of students that we have on campus. And to do that, we have to talk about the social distancing guideline, because that's our number one parameter when any planning takes place. So based on the conditions, I'm going to recommend that the school committee revise the MERSD policy to align with the DESE guidance. By doing this, it's going to allow us to bring back K-5 to full in-person, 5 days a week, and it's going to give us the parameters that we need to plan a return for the middle high school. And as I said earlier, our game plan is to come to you on the 16th with the middle high school concept plan. It is just it's a very different set of circumstances, different set of challenges, and different set of potential remedies. So not to confuse the two tonight, I think we need, if we could just stick with discussion of elementary, I think it'll make things clearer for people who are listening. So if anyone asked why now, I think, we know it's in the best interest of our students, academically, social, emotionally, to get back to some sense of routine and normalcy. The indicators are in great shape. We just went through them. The metrics are highly favorable. The guidance is there to support it. The guidance identifies the priority to be bringing kids back to in-person learning. And I think the guidance has been established to be flexible enough to allow that. Both the CDC and the DESE have provided a set of mitigation efforts and social distancing recommendations that, when paired together, can create a safe environment. We have 3 months of local data that shows once the kids are in school, it doesn't become the super spreader. There were a lot of things we reasonably thought in September and October that just didn't bear out, right? We thought kids wouldn't wear masks. I'm not hearing, people complaining because the kids aren't wearing masks. I'm hearing really that the kids are great at complying. We thought that schools would be super spreaders. Reasonable to think that, given what we knew at the time, but it's just not bearing out that that's the case. So I think what we know now versus what we know then says that if we continue our rigorous mitigation efforts, we're not going to see significant school transmission. And we could look to Gloucester and Beverly as an example. They both went in early, below 6 feet, and have not had they haven't had outbreaks. They haven't had large scale school transmission. And then the vaccination program is underway, which I think backs up the effort. And I think our timeline times out nicely with what the president laid out today. But all in all, both the department and the CDC say that vaccines are not a prerequisite. So while it can support our effort, it doesn't necessarily have to prevent our effort if that timeline isn't recognized. So what's the work that needs to be done here tonight? We need to have a discussion about revising the distancing guideline. And if you do that, by default, you're going to accept the DESE revised busing guidance, because they go hand in hand. And then I think this is in one bucket. And in the next bucket, I'm going to ask you to consider that if we do at the elementary move to a full in-person model and amend the social distancing guideline to do so, at that point, I think we need to signal that we're moving to in-person, discontinue high flex, and remodel the remote learning delivery system into more of an academy model. And the working concept right now is that we would group, overall, we have 7% of our students at the elementary level selecting remote only. If we anticipate that students who are participating in the hybrid will participate in the full time, we would then transition students who need remote only into an academy. We would make 2 multi-age classrooms, K2 through 5. They would be populated with students from both Essex and Memorial School. We would assign an educator to that group to be their kind of their shepherd, their daily teacher to provide guidance and support. This individual would liaison back with, classroom teachers to ensure that they had the right lesson sequence. They would continue with the MERC curriculum. It would be Wonders. It would be everyday math. It would be No Atom. It would be our social studies scope and sequence. And we're exploring how we can make some connections back to their originally assigned classroom. So maybe it's a morning meeting check-in, maybe it's a live stream. But really, putting the teacher back in the in-person mode means pulling them from the high flex and giving them the responsibility to manage students in their class, and then assign someone else to manage the students who are at home and to group them appropriately. I do think it's going to be near impossible with the numbers that we're talking about returning to the 5-day week. It's really no longer possible to ask teachers to do both things with such a small number of students still learning at home. So this is kind of the package of policy changes that would need to be made to set the table for what I've kind of referenced a couple of times now. We would target a start date of March 22nd or the 29th, depending on when we reach a decision. We'd bring back K-5 students to attend full-day school, just like we did pre-COVID, but with all the mitigation efforts in place. And these are the efforts that are key to ensuring that it remains a safe environment in school. One thing to keep in mind is that for classroom distancing, it'll be 6 feet between desks in all areas where that is possible. And right now, we believe 24 out of 28 of the general classrooms will be able to stay at 6 feet. We have 4 classrooms that may need to go to 4.5 feet. I think Jennifer was explaining today that 5 feet may be doable. So that's why we're asking for the flexibility, because it may be 5, it may be 5.5, but it may be 4.25. So using the range, what we'll always do is maximize the distance between. And then what we do know is that every teacher workstation is at a minimum 6 feet separation from the students, ranging up to 15 feet potentially. So that teachers still will be 6 feet socially distanced from their students. So that's the package. This is the hope. This is the target timeline. So it's for the committee to determine whether or not you are comfortable at this point revising our local guidance.
I've looked at this so many times because I've had the pleasure of being in many meetings regarding this over the last week. Maybe it would be great if we could either start some discussion or if we could get a motion on the table and then we could discuss the motion on the table.
This is
Ken Warnock. Of course.
With the squeaky voice.
Ken,
Yeah, this is Walter.
I think if your name is Diane Clark, you need to mute your phone, please.
Oh, hi, people.
Go ahead, Ken.
That's what Zoom bombing has got to. We're doing well. I'd like to move. I was going to say I'd like to make the motion that we accept that we go forward with the recommendation to revise the social distancing guidelines, both in person as well as on the busing. But I'd also like to have a discussion before we vote on that.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion.
Are we talking about just the social distancing guidelines and then separately the high flex situation? Because that wasn't included in the motion. So I just want to make sure I'm bringing up my stuff at the right time.
Can I revise my motion to include that? Because
Sure.
I think that's going to be an essential part.
Might as well.
It's social distancing in the facilities, on the busing, as well as changes to the model for those who remain fully remote.
Yeah.
I would propose that we keep them separate.
I second that.
Okay. So we revert to Ken's original motion. We are only looking right now. Let's look at distancing.
So you want to take the first motion, which is, okay.
Conversation on distancing only in the classrooms and on the bus.
The discussion points, I guess I wanted to, and Pam, do you mind switching to the page of what are the mitigations that you had? Because there were a couple that were on there that I just wanted to make sure my understanding of the DESE guidelines was they say it is suggested to reduce the social distancing provided that all other mitigations are in place. And I think on here, there's definitely the lunch issue where we relocated. And I also just wanted to double check, because we spent a bit of time on it. It was a big concern around the HVAC, especially now that we're in winter time with the doors and windows closed. Are we meeting the guidelines for HVAC throughout?
Yeah,
Well, maybe that's a question for
yeah,
Robbie. Go.
we were very early on that and got a lot of that in order prior to opening the school. We enlisted an engineer, a design engineer, to come in, give us a full assessment and put all of those protocols in place very early. We were fortunate that we have updated equipment in a lot of our spaces, but even in areas where the older schools, we were able to comply with the standards quite quickly due to the introduction of things like better filters and also on the ground filters. We also did additional measures over and above just to address concerns people had that weren't part of the engineering report, but just to also make sure that people felt comfortable in their spaces, such as window box fans, et cetera. So that was something that really hasn't needed to change since then. And we did a lot of air balancing testing as well, but we were told to track as the cold weather came through to make sure that we could continue to maintain that airflow, and that's been going very well.
Okay. And I assume, is there any need or any plan to, now that we're saying, okay, at least the elementary schools will be a higher density, is there any sort of need to revisit the engineers' reports, or just even the, hallways may see more students, and I know progress in Memorial School has continued, or if pretty much what we did for the work initially still stands now?
My understanding is that it still stands and that we're good to go based on the number of air turns and the equipment that we have in place. There's already at max capacity.
Okay. And I just wanted to add one final comment, because I've heard questions around this page notes, and we talked earlier, Pam's hybrid indicators talked about their participating in pooled testing. That was at the middle and high school level. But just to be clear, I don't believe that any of the pooled testing at the K through 5 will involve students. It will only involve staff, correct? Because I guess I don't know if there's guidance. I'm not clear on the guidance if it says pooled testing is one of the mitigation measures, but I don't know what it says about students.
So we're open to adding it, but the health group's recommendation to this point has been it's not necessary to do it at the elementary school because they're not considered to be spreaders. Okay. And that's our nursing team, our school doctor, and our board of health representatives.
Okay.
But we are doing the teachers at K to 5 are participating as of next week.
And as a last comment, right now it's state funding the testing, and we're still prepared where the district will carry forward with the expectation reimbursement testing beyond the initial state funded part, explicitly to get the testing off the ground. So,
yes.
Okay. Those are really my only comments or questions. Thank you.
Teresa's raising her hand. Go ahead, Teresa.
So one is on the tail of the HVAC stuff. I know the CDC had updated their recommendations just a couple days ago, and I don't know that there's anything different there, but I also know that we have a number of elementary school teachers on our meeting listening to what we're discussing and everything. And so who is in charge of making sure, I would guess Jason has probably got this in hand to make sure that what we've already looked at with the engineer's report also jives with what the just a couple days ago guidelines from the CDC are. Is that something we need to do, or is ongoing?
Yeah, there's no question that with the new guidance in there, Jason takes a look at that, compares it to where we were, and then GGD, which is the engineering firm, they're just a call away. We actually happen to work with them on other projects, so it's very easy to make sure that if there's any other types of adjustments that are needed, that we can make them. But again, the thing to remember is that mostly what we did was put a lot of infrastructure in the area of filters, which are now at the maximum filtration levels possible. There could be some additional changes regarding to the number of turns of air circulations, but whatever that item is, we'll make sure to have it. So we should be in good shape.
Okay, I just feel like as we're discussing this change, it's important to make sure that we bring that up for the people listening, especially. And then my other question is, Sarah, you might even be able to help with this. So again, looking at the revised CDC guidelines that very recently came out, which has been a huge help. And it does talk about, 6 feet social distancing or more is ideal. But when you have, lower rates in the community and that sort of thing with all these other mitigating factors, I just want to be clear that there's somewhere in there that says that these factors, which we do have in place, mean that 6 feet is not completely 100% necessary, because everything I read through there, it just kept popping up 6 feet, 6 feet, and it was just hard to find, but I know that it's there. I just want to make sure that we can point to it so that, when we're asking teachers to do this, that we can really have that back.
Yeah, Teresa, we were on a meeting today, Pam, maybe it was yesterday, I don't know, they all run together. Pam and I and our town nurse from Manchester and Aaron, our Board of Health representative from Essex. And so they had looked at it really carefully as well. And not only are we doing all of the mitigation strategies recommended by the CDC, but we're doing more that the CDC doesn't even recommend. So I feel really comfortable with this decision at this time. And as you all know, I went over it with a fine-tooth comb because I sent you all my notes.
Which I very much appreciated. I will tell you that made a really big difference in how I was looking at this. So that was very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Is there anything to do with the cohorts though? Some of this had, there was discussion in that report about keeping pods separate and keeping cohorts separate. And
yeah, well, for the elementary school, it's really easy to keep each classroom separate. So that's one of the reasons why this discussion is different than the discussion we'll have next week, because each classroom is a cohort.
And Mary and Aaron both brought up that we should note things like passing in the hallway and lunch stay at 6 feet, because that's where the potential cohorts or classrooms would be in a mixed environment. So as long as we're adhering to 6 feet when there's potential for different cohorts, classrooms to be together, we're within the guidance.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And we should thank them, because they're like, you really want to be sure that if you get the question.
Yeah.
So they were very good at emphasizing that. And they've been great. It's probably worth noting they've been great partners throughout, and been very helpful with their advice.
Just one last thing, if I can jump in, Teresa, and it was good you mentioned one of the things throughout all this, starting last year, because we're almost at a year anniversary of this whole thing starting. It's been safety of staff, students, the community is first and foremost. And I think we're definitely, I appreciate the seriousness that we're taking this when we're relaxing something that's a safety guideline, which has been the 6 feet. I guess I want to, in my mind, being a pessimistic engineer personality at heart, throughout all this may revert to, if there are things found out, the contact tracing is still underway, the pool testing is going on. People should have the expectation, knock on wood, it doesn't happen, that we may be flipping back to hybrid or fully remote at any point in time for any classroom, any group of people. And so it took me a while, Teresa and Sarah, thank you for the notes, to process in my mind. This isn't life is going back to normal. This is one, a physical distance requirement out of many that have been introduced in the past 12 months that we're backing off on to allow the students to come back in for all of the reasons that have been enunciated throughout. And so that was my last soapbox on this, but I had one question that I just thought of, which we're doing this vote. My motion was to allow the administration the flexibility to adjust the guidelines. Right now, you're proposing that it's for elementary because there is a plan for elementary. This does not, there are different challenges to be faced at the middle and high school levels. You said, Pam, and that we've noted. And there are not solutions nor even a timeline to say, hey, this time next week, we're going with middle and high school. Will there be a chance as school committee for us, or for a way or a mechanism for us to hear those concerns and to understand that plan and have a say or not when we do come up with a middle high school plan?
Yes, the team's on standby and they have concepts. What they need to know is not to go down this rabbit hole tonight, but what we know is that 3 feet doesn't even get us all the way to where we want to go at the middle high school. So if you vote for 3 to 6 feet tonight, they will at least know the parameters that they can work in. We're doing what we can at 6 feet. If you go 3 to 6 feet, there's room for ideation to bring in more students. And I think they'll be prepared to bring something to this group on the 16th.
Excellent. And
As
so families,
how we can maximize in-person student return with the new guidelines.
thank you. And this really is only the immediate impact, the immediate effect of this may just be for K through 5 students. We don't know what we're doing beyond.
The immediate, yes, changing the guideline gives you the immediate impact of implementing in-person for elementary and allowing the middle high school a wider parameter with which to try to build an in-person or an enhanced hybrid model.
Thank you.
We're not voting on 3 to 6 district. Well, I understand you're saying that, but for instance, I mean, this vote specifically is elementary.
The way Ken put it was not specifically for elementary, and I would suggest that we just do this vote for the district-wide so that will allow the middle and high school principals to begin to plan.
Can we just use the language that's in the first paragraph of this slide, which is amend the MERSD social distancing standard, blah, blah, blah?
Yes.
So Ken, did you want to amend your motion?
I will amend my motion to include this first paragraph. I'm not going to read it because it's shared as the revised current MESD policies to align with the DESE guidance, as well as there's a paragraph on the busing as well. But I'm going to I'll leave as we talked about the what was the third point out that you and Teresa had both brought up. So we'll handle that next. I propose.
I'll be the second on your motion.
Which is just the first paragraph of this slide.
Yes.
Plus busing.
The busing goes hand in hand.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on this? Okay. Annie?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So 3 to 6 feet district-wide allows elementary school to go back in person full-time at approximately around 4.5 to 6 feet and allows the middle and high school administrators to begin making plans. To continue working on the plans that, of course, they've been working on nonstop all year. All right, so then we need to have the next part of our discussion, which is with children back in school full-time, we are now leaving. At the very beginning of this whole discussion, Pam was asked, that district was asked to create 3 models. What does your in-person look like? What does your hybrid look like? And what does your fully remote look like? And I would argue that we are now transferring to our fully in-person model at the elementary school.
Sarah, can I just make a comment on that? In the 3 plans that we had, the fully remote for the purposes of last September was a synchronous model. So I think the fully remote that we presented and ultimately used will look, I think, and feel a little different from the remote academy model that we're possibly talking about here, correct?
Okay, but I think that, yes. Well, fully remote will no longer, yes, it will look different. We have approximately 7% of students at the elementary school who may still be opting for fully remote, even though the full in-person option is available. Teresa.
Okay, so this is going to sound like a replay of me from the last time around, but at the beginning of this year, when families had to make really hard choices about their plans, these families made the choice to remain enrolled in the district and participate fully remote. They did that because They looked at all of the options and said, this is the best fit for my kid. Our district we put all our eggs in this high flex model for now. And that's the basket we chose and moved forward with. And so to now in March, pull the rug out from under those families and say, by the way, this high flex model that you chose to remain engaged with the district with, we're now going to put you in a remote learning academy where you're not interacting with your actual class peers, which you were before, which was part of the whole selling point of all of this. You're not going to be able to do that anymore. You're going to be in a mixed age group and mixed school group. Kids that are having to stay remote or families that are choosing to stay remote for whatever reason it is, they're trying to get through this pandemic too. And pulling that out from under them right now, I think is really unwise and unfair. They put their trust in us as a district, just like the situation last time around. People made really hard choices at a really hard time. And I think that we have the responsibility. We've said all along that remote would be an option through the end of the year. Well, yes, this is technically a remote option, but it's subpar compared to what they've been experiencing so far. And I cannot support that.
Pam, do you want to share some of, like, Jennifer Roberts had some good stories about what's been happening so far in K-2?
Yep, Jen and John are here, and I'm sure they'd be happy to share their experience and their expertise.
Jen, could you jump in and share what you were saying about some of the classrooms that have only 1 or 2 students remote and how that's been working so far?
Well, hi, everybody. Sorry, I just turned my video on. We've had a really successful K-2 experience since the students all came back. The teachers are so excited that they're all there, or most of them. I would say that we have 3 classrooms currently that have no remote students. They're all in, and it's just been amazing. I mean, it's actually, some teachers have talked to me about it and they have tears in their eyes. They're like, we had morning meeting this morning and we had no cameras on and we were all together. And but I talked to one teacher today who has almost all of their students in. And, it's tricky. And I'm just speaking honestly, these are hard conversations to sort of have in a public way, but it's tricky for a family who might have chosen, for whatever their reasons are, to remain remote as the number decreases to a really small number. Because now, even though we're giving them what, as Teresa said, we'd sort of promised or whatever, it's starting to feel differently for the family at home and the children at school and the teacher. So let me just give you an example. If you have, 15 children in your classroom, and let's just say you have 1 at home, it starts just feeling different. It rather than the high flex where you had kind of a mix going back and forth. And so what the teachers were actually doing is really not high flexing, they're really live streaming. Because if you think about it, in order to high flex, sort of like everybody needs their computers on, and that feels like a strange thing to do with 15 kids in the classroom and only 1 at home or 2. So they're having to rethink a little bit how they're doing business, and we're kind of getting a glimpse of what that looks like. So I'm guessing some families might start making changes in their thinking based on that alone, because, it must feel a little weird to almost feel so isolated in that way. But I will tell you that the teachers and the children, they've been so excited, have such positive things to say. They're excited to actually see their classmates that they hadn't seen in person. They're, jokingly, I was saying that one kindergarten teacher told me that one of the kids was sitting there, and as all the kids walked in, she was introducing herself to the other cohort. Hi, my name is so-and-so, and it's so great to meet you all, So we've had nothing but positive experiences. I think the remote kids and families are kind of faced with a tough decision right now, and I respect that. I get it. But I think that this is it's a hard discussion to have, and I see both sides, but I also know that it's not just about the promise we made. It's sort of also about the efficacy of what we're trying to do. And I'm starting to feel like it's losing a little something in the translation as we get everybody back except for maybe 1. So I get why that's a hard conversation. So Sarah, was that the type of thing you were saying we were talking about that you wanted me to share?
Yes, that was perfect. Yeah, because I think the high flex model is designed to have everybody sitting in front of a screen. And that might, I don't know what will happen in middle school and high school. And if you're talking about one hour class or moving from class to class and the teachers are doing activities, it's really different at middle and high school than it is in elementary school. Because in elementary school, you kind of don't want the kids to be on a screen the whole time. So I like your idea of being able to like have them in an have them still included in the classroom. Like the kids who are more live streaming in could be still like technically in some kind of remote academy, but they're live streaming they're in their classroom, but somebody other than their teacher is also monitoring and checking in with them. I feel like there's a way to do this so that the teacher does not have to be high flexing throughout the whole day and the children can still feel part of their classroom.
Sarah, do you mind if I just add a little piece onto what Jen was saying?
Yeah.
I think one of the things with the high flex, the reason it worked was just so like in reality, like, boots on the ground, teachers could give 50% of their attention and focus to the kids that were on the screen, but then 50% of their attention, or only 50% of their attention was left for the kids that were in front of them.
There you go back.
And when you have that, a smaller number of students.
The day before Daddy's birthday.
I'm sorry, if your name is, if you're Christina, I don't know how to pronounce it, Yukins,
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, sorry. So, so they 50% of their attention is on the students that are on screen at home and 50% of their attention is on the kids that are in class. And when you have smaller class size like that, because you only have half of the kids in front of you, the classroom management demands on the teacher is much lower. When you now kind of fill the classroom, and these classrooms at 6 feet are full. The desks are spread out throughout the whole room. The classroom management demands for the teacher goes up exponentially, which just the reality of it is that they're really only able to dedicate maybe 10 or 15% of their attention to if there's one student at home, let's say. So we've done the same thing. The teachers have done more of a simulcast situation, and it's just I'm not sure that it's even possible to fully continue high flex without people at home feeling a bit of a downgrade. The other piece, like you mentioned, Sarah, the screens. We've had to swallow a lot of things this year that we don't believe in philosophically about education, and one of them is the amount of screen time that the young kids at an elementary school have had to be a part of, and so bringing the kids back in. One of the reasons the teachers are so excited about that is they're able to get the kids off screens and put the devices away, and kind of learn in real life without being connected to a screen. So in order to do high flex, you could take 3 kids from class and the 1 student home and put them in a breakout group, but now those kids that are in class are on screens instead of not. So those are some of the kind of additional challenges that we see looking forward.
Sarah, so if you try to picture, I can tell you what it looks like from walking in a classroom. So if I walk in a classroom where, let's just say, 1 child is remote only, I will see let's just say 15 desks, back in the day, like when I went to school, in rows, 6 feet apart. A lot of the teachers have taped off the floors and what have you. And then what happens is the teachers teaching sort of stand and deliver from the front section of the room. And typically what happens is they're using their stand for their iPad, and they have it sort of off to the side with the iPad in it. And there would be that 1 or possibly 2 students, however, depending on the classroom, you'd see their face, and it's almost like they're participating in the class as the 15 kids sitting in their desks, but they're on the iPad. And the teacher's teaching to the class and trying, as John said, to be attentive to the student, but there's no way you're high flexing anymore. It's not feasible. It's not realistic to think you can do that.
So it sounds like we basically already moved away from the high flex model.
They absolutely have. They had to. Like Right. When we first moved into this, we had a lot of conversations about it. And you can't teach, like John said, to 15, 16 students in your room and do all the management and the, the appropriate pedagogy that you need. And then for one student, be trying to high flex, because that was all through technology. And it was all.
How are the family, I'm sure you and John have spoken with the families whose children are at home, being the only one or two students from home. How's it going?
Are
they okay with it?
I think it varies depending on the family. I've heard mixed things. I've heard some families say, their students are flourishing, they're good students, this works for their family, they're okay with it. But I've recently talked to some teachers who have chatted with folks, and they're starting to have mixed feelings about it, but nothing derogatory toward the school. It's like they're now processing what we're processing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, the high flex thing made sense in that model, but as we move to this model, it really doesn't make sense. You can't teach that way.
So it sounds like sort of maybe if we could continue this sort of live streaming for the children who are home, but also facilitated by some kind of person who's in charge of the remote academy to facilitate some of the materials delivery and stuff like that, we could put something together that would work pretty well.
I think we clearly have to explore that. John, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, maybe that there is an opportunity for that person to support the teachers in their efforts to kind of even carry off that simulcasting, because that's challenging. There's just one other point too. If you think about it, if your child is one of the 17 that are in the classroom in the high flex model, the teacher is staring into a screen an awful lot. So it's just very awkward. So when you go into the classrooms now, they've totally changed up their setup so that they don't have a screen in front of them. They're able to kind of interact directly with the students. But so maybe there is a blended approach where we can do something to support the teachers so that they're able to, kind of carry this load and have the kids in front of them.
So what we're seeing on the screen on that slide is not what I'm hearing.
The numbers?
No, just the structure of what this will be. Families electing full remote will be transitioned to a multi-age district-wide remote-only classroom. That
I
does.
think we've been talking about what they're seeing rather than what's being proposed.
Right.
I think that Sarah had asked me to comment on what we're experiencing, like Teresa said. So because we recognize the high flex is just not doable, this has been a natural shift, sort of like it or not, this is what we've had to do. I do think it's really tricky. The live streaming thing is not necessarily a good thing. I'm just telling you, it's the lesser of the evil of what happened when we made this move back. Because, if I have one classroom that has 4 children that are remote only and then others that have none, it's just this whole thing where that teacher now has to be high flexing, and yet the class across the hall is jumping and there's nobody. It's just really challenging to think that teachers are going to have to do any sort of remote teaching while they have all these children in front of them. So I really do think we have to have further discussion about what the remote aspect will look like. I don't want to jump to a conclusion because I'm telling you that some are live streaming because it's the right thing to do. It was the better thing to do if you compared it to high flex. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just for clarification, because the second bullet, which says that it'll be staffed with a teacher or teaching assistant who will act as a liaison to the classroom teacher. Could that be explained a little bit more? Does that mean like it's a teaching assistant all day in front of the remote only kids? In which case that doesn't, I mean, it's in following the curriculum, but obviously there's a skill difference between a teacher and a teaching assistant. You can just explain that bullet point a bit more.
Pam, I think that's you were the principals.
Yeah, no, I think this is the concept in play. I think the teaching assistant, the concept as it's here is that the person is a liaison between the classroom teacher and the students who still require remote access. So instead of they would facilitate gathering the lessons from each of the different classrooms, being able to present or support the kids in doing the lessons during the time. So it's I guess it was probably a half step to asynchronous, but guided learning. I mean, we can have a teacher in there if there is an appropriate person to assign to it, and we can go out and try to find 2 teachers, and that we will be able to do. We'll find somebody. We also have teaching assistants who are highly skilled and have been doing the assist for teachers throughout the first semester in terms of working with kids online and making sure they're accessing. So if I'm hearing from the committee that the position is that we need to continue with the high flex and while implementing in person, that's what we'll go back and attempt to put a package together to do. And we can come back on the 16th and see where we're at.
Can I clarify my position on this? My position isn't that high flex exactly as what it looked like is what's absolutely necessary. That's just what we all learned, that's where the whole focus went. And we were told that it was going to work well in all modalities. And apparently this is a consideration that just was missed in that.
Well,
what
Teresa,
I'm absolutely not in
my
favor
response
of,
would be is we're leaving those modalities.
Right, but we also
Right.
all along told people that for the duration of this school year, again, come fall, different story. You don't get a choice on that. But we told people that for the duration of this school year, while this is things are still chaotic. They really are. And I'm not going to be in favor of anything that in March takes 27 kids and we say to those 27 families, by the way, now you're going to do a half asynchronous program with a teacher or a TA maybe, and be completely pulled out of your school class that we've built this up for you. That may be what's keeping those families from falling apart or those kids getting through this. And so I feel like we have to find a way to keep them in the class somehow, even if it's not looking exactly like what I'm understand and can sympathize with the concerns of teaching mostly in person and just 1 or 2, but we made it work all along. We can find a way to make it work for these families for the rest of the year. Sorry.
So
Other than that, I have no strong feelings on the subject at all.
I was just going to say, like, if you look at it in kind of like a linear fashion, we've been doing high flex all along. And then what Jen was describing was that just organically, it kind of transitioned into more of a live stream just out of like practicality and necessity. But we're not really feeling that that's the most educationally sound model either. So we had put together as a team this concept of an academy so that the kids could be provided with direct instruction to them as opposed to just kind of looking into a classroom. And then maybe there's some sort of melding of those things where they participate in class meeting in the morning, maybe it's science experiment type thing that they could kind of participate with the class, or maybe there are other opportunities. But we're trying to make sure that the model for the kids at home is more than just watching, from a screen.
So here's what I'm hearing here is different than what we're being asked to vote on. And so I would ask that you more clearly define what the remote will be, and then I'd feel more comfortable voting on it. Because right now I see what's on the slide, and I'm hearing a little hesitation or some uncertainty about what the delivery will look like.
Are we, Pam, maybe you could clarify that, because I think we've talked a lot about what's sort of happening on the ground, and maybe that's clouding what this would actually look like. So do you want to say what exactly this was intended to look like, Pam?
I think we will be having some negotiation sessions on Thursday and probably can flesh out more details. I do think we're asking, I see it fairly clearly, and I hear the concern that, Teresa, you're raising. I feel like bringing back all students to a traditional school day model signals a departure from where we were. And I'm not certain that there is going to be an appropriate level of balance to make you comfortable with how we have to run remote for the remainder of the year. So at some point, we may be discussing whether or not full in-person can still be on the table.
I think also there's an issue here that, you know, when we started this in August or September, the idea was to always move forward, always try to get the kids back, as many as possible, as early as possible. So now here we are in March, we're talking about getting more kids back. We're reducing the social distancing guidelines, or we're expanding them, however you want to say it. So like you just said, Pam, we're moving away from where we were. And I think it is a foregone conclusion that when we move away from the hybrid model, that the expectation is getting everybody back in person. And if there is a group that isn't back in person, I think that model changes too, to what you are presenting.
I feel like at the very beginning, when we talked about the models, the idea was that if we were back full in person, we were back full in person. And we were doing it because we had confidence that we were able to provide enough mitigation that our schools would be a safe place to be.
Not for families that have continued immune compromised family members. There are kids that can't be in person even when with us all going back. I mean, there are reasons for this stuff.
And I think I'm just maybe I'm with Teresa on this too. Like, I don't think there's any argument that to get as many kids back as possible. But if we're going to continue to provide a remote only option, it has to be good and appropriate. And that's where I think some of the questions are. Like multi-age district wide with potentially a teaching assistant is much different than what's been delivered so far. And so just kind of pushing it to make it as good as possible.
It's also different than what we just heard from the principals. So I just think that we need clarity.
Well, I guess what I'm hearing from the principals is the ability to teach two things at once when your primary mode of delivery is in person is declining so much that kids are essentially live streaming in because that's the best they can do at this point. When we discuss it, coming up with a structured model where kids report with a similar age group and someone is working as a liaison between teachers and the students to ensure that they have their lessons available to them and they're guided through them instead of working in an asynchronous model, which is what many other districts have done to achieve the in-person component. It still provides a structured day with guidance and support from an educator. If we want to make the qualifier that the educator must be a teacher, certified teacher, we can certainly do that. That's not a problem. I'm not saying that I'm endorsing this program as the best possible thing. What I'm saying is the balance is shifting as we move forward toward in-person, where we will have a different group of the community that feels disaffected by this. I think we spent a very long time with folks who felt that we should have been in person from the beginning, feeling like we were doing a significant disservice to them and their children by not pushing to have kids in sooner. So at some point, there is no way to do this to make everyone completely happy. I'm happy we can pursue through our conversations on Thursday, continuing the high flex going forward, or if you have a recommendation you'd like us to follow up on for developing a different proposal, we can certainly do that.
So
I'd like to say something.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're not taking public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I would like to propose a little more clarity. So a remote model. I'm okay if it's multi-aged or whatever, but staffed by a teacher with, I don't know how you would build in some sort of direct classroom connection between that student and their what is it? What are the kids called?
Class,
their student whatever peers. And I don't know how you define the amount of time if you need to, but I just don't want those kids to be isolated. I think that that's my issue with this, is that I want it to be robust and I want them to have a connection to their teacher. So however you can make that happen, I'm with it. But
I would be good with what Annie just said, with the connection to the classroom being like zooming in, or whatever, streaming into a daily morning meeting. They get together with their class. I honestly think I'm with Jen and John. If the kids are the one kid trying to live stream into their classroom, it feels weird. You're no longer looking at a group of kids on Zoom. You're looking at a group of kids walking around the classroom. Whereas in this multi-age model, they'd have a new group of kids who maybe they would be in a group with sometimes on Zoom, or they would be doing their assignments. I know it's not ideal. None of this is ideal. This whole year is not ideal. But I think that this solution would allow us to get 93% of our elementary school students back in school full time.
I don't think it's stopping us for getting 93% back in full time. And I mean, even as Jen and John said, that, you know, as this happens, it may happen that some of these families reevaluate. When we're looking at 27 students, maybe not 27 families, 27 students on this slide, do we know why? Are these health issues? Are they personal choice? Do we know why? Because again,
so here I'll say, I think you need to listen to some of the opinions.
I'm going to let you speak, Kathy, but can I talk first? I did not
know. Because I think you need to listen to the opinions of the 3 psychologists in the district.
I was about to say that I did not realize that Kathy Penoyer was a school psychologist. I thought she was speaking as a parent, which is why I declined to let her speak earlier. But of course, I am happy to have our expert school psychology weigh in. So with that being said, yes, I would love to hear from you.
So I've been working with kids since September in person, right? And I have seen the children that I work with come back in you know, bits and pieces, right? And you know, to the extent where they were 2 days a week, then 4 days a week. I've seen the amount of joy in the children that have come back, not just the kids I work with, but the kids I encounter day to day, that is immeasurable in terms of value to their learning, to their emotional health, to their well-being. That is an incredible amount of benefit in terms of, you know, what we do. These children are adhering to every single protocol that the teachers apply. They are sweet and cooperative. They're learning social distancing because they're little guys, and they're learning everything you teach them about every kind of health protocol that they need to know. And they're absolutely in joy of being in their classrooms and being with their teachers and of being with each other, right? So that kind of benefit, you can't quantify, you can't measure, right? But I see it day to day because I'm there every day with all these kids, and I see them come in. I see them with happy expressions, with a bounce in their steps, with everything that they need to have in order to be successful. And I can't put any value on that. And that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, I'm not sure that helps us with the parents who have their children at home.
So the parents who have their children at home, right? So if you had a dedicated professional who was going to help that child with everything they needed to have, right? And they formed a relationship with that child, that would be very successful. Children who have executive functioning issues, who have attention issues, who have difficulties attending to Zoom, right? They're always going to have challenges with remote learning. But if you have a teacher who's dedicated to giving them the kinds of strategies, the kinds of help that they need, that is going to be a measure of success for them. That's going to be a recipe of success for them. And that should be appreciated and respected and also promoted in the district, because that is important. Not everybody can come back to school because of different health needs.
Okay. Thank you. So anybody else on school committee?
Sarah, one last comment on Ken on this. I also am a bit unclear, and I think this is an area that needs a little bit more definition. I'm not quite sure in some ways. If I think back to the old one-room schoolhouse, and these are the little kids with the teacher and these are the older kids with the teacher and multi-grade shared, I don't know what that would look like in 2021. And I guess my proposal on this would be, I've heard the voices, we can't leave remote students behind, and we need to make sure they have a robust experience as best as we can provide. And it sounds like we need a little bit more definition, or we need a little bit better understanding of that. But in some ways, moving forward with the rest of K through 5, that's going to proceed, as well as it sounds like we need a little bit more depth on planning on this one.
Yeah, I think we need we need to get K to 5 back in. And we need to figure out how to best serve the students who are not coming back in. But we know that high flex doesn't work because we've tried it with K2 and we know it doesn't work. So I guess it's a little bit, perhaps we need to ask you to go back to the drawing board and present us at our next meeting with a little more clarity on exactly what this will look like.
Sarah, can I just add a piece of data?
Yes.
The numbers for 3 through 5 remote are as it stands today. I would tell you the numbers for K2, we saw a shift in those numbers when we brought the kids back. So some families that were remote only made the decision to now send their children, because if their thinking was they didn't like the high flex kids being on, back and forth, 2 days in, 2 days out for whatever reason. So I'm guessing the numbers in 3 through 5 will go down a little bit. I don't know how much, but I don't think they'll be as significant as what you see there. I would think it would change a little bit at both schools.
Why don't you reach out and contact those 26, is my math right? Those 26 families, find out how they're feeling about going back, and then kind of take it from there, because we may only have, at the end of the day, many of those families might decide to go back full time. So why don't we see what we're working with first?
Shannon, the K2 numbers, we already did that outreach, and those are the ones that chose not to come back 4 days a week.
So these numbers, these 26, are hard and fast.
No. So K2, it's the reality as it stands today. When we've gotten kids back in the building 4 days a week, these families made the decision to stay remote only. We got a few others back. So those numbers are real today. 3 through 5.
It went down. That's what you're saying.
3 through 5 will probably
look like the K through 2 right now.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense?
I mean, I think one of the strengths of our being such a small, one of the positives of having such a small district is that we do have the ability to reach out to these families, because it's a small, real number of people, and find out how we can solve this problem. This is a solvable problem. This is not the end of the world. We're going to figure this out so that we can get the 97% plus of students who want to be back in full-time. We just need to figure out a solution. I don't think it's not doable. It's a small number. It's not 500 kids. It's around 20.
So let me bottom line this, because maybe I put too many details. The question really being asked is the discontinuation of the high flex in the transition to this type of a model. The question at the heart of this really is the committee going to, can it pull back on the expectation that instruction has to be delivered by the classroom teacher?
And we need that decision because otherwise we can't get the teachers. Otherwise the teachers need more time off and make the hybrid happen.
If we're going to keep with high flex, we're going to try to, the 5 days probably comes off the table, and you're looking at 4 days. You're also looking at now a full in-person model plus a high flex, which I think is a different working condition. So I think with all due consideration to the group that chooses to stay remote, I think the question being asked of the committee at the policy level is, can we see our way forward to a new phase of this, which it may require us amending what we can offer for remote at the elementary level.
Can I speak again as somebody who has 30 years as a psychologist in
Sure.
learning, right? So, if you have a child who is trying to balance looking at their teacher through Zoom, doing the things that they're told to do on the paper, and they're a young child, that is incredibly difficult. And then if you have a teacher who is trying to balance helping all those children in class with helping someone on Zoom, that is a huge and I think unrealistic expectation for a classroom teacher who works so hard to do everything they're expected to do in terms of curriculum development, social and emotional learning for a child, at the same time as attending to somebody on Zoom. If you had somebody who was dedicated to working with solely remote learners on Zoom in all those aspects, I think you would have a better outcome. And you could also, that person would also have the time to talk to those people's parents and understand what's going on at home, what's happening in that remote learning environment that would affect that child. You can't do that with a teacher who is trying to simultaneously teach all these different skills and then attend to in-person learning. That's an insurmountable task, especially for K-5 children who need so much from you as a person. And you can't do that.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. So what we've got is we've got Pam and our administrators and our school psychologists all telling us that our students in K-5 would be better off not trying to high flex the remote kids in. And while we might not love what's on the slide right now, perhaps we could come to terms with the school committee being okay with continuing something other than high flex that will still need to be sorted out. We don't have all the details yet, but that we are definitely not going to be asking, could we come to a decision saying that we are not going to be asking the K-5 teachers to high flex once they return to in-person learning? That's what we're really looking for.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I will
Is that
second.
Pardon?
Is that Annie making a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will second, Shannon.
I have not made a motion yet.
We'd like to hear what it is first, Shannon.
I know what she's going to say.
No, you don't, because I don't think you're going to like what I say.
Okay.
So I would make a motion to discontinue the high flex model under the condition that we see a more fleshed out articulation of what the remote model will be at our next meeting.
For grades K-5, can we append?
For grades K-5.
Can I say something there, Annie?
Let us get our second and then we'll have discussion.
Well, I'm good with that. I'll second it.
I don't
Okay.
know what.
Jennifer, go ahead. No, go ahead. What do you want to say?
So I think things have gotten so confused.
They have.
The reality is K2 right now is not high flexing, they're live streaming. 3-5 is high flexing because we still have hybrid students. So if you make a vote tonight to abandon high flex, we still have hybrid learners. So please don't vote that, because until we get 3-5 all back in, we need to high flex in 3-5.
So this is pending. This is talking about what happens on March 30th.
When we return to an in-person model.
Right. I think that's the point that I was trying to make. Like, if you do that now.
Yeah, I get it. The point is, though, that we don't have a clear articulation of what the remote model will be. And that's what's really frustrating me, because I don't feel like this was clearly defined for us, and it got very confused. So that's where I am with this.
Okay.
And with respect to everyone, that's what it's, it won't have the full clear definition until we can hire somebody to start to, we can structure it, but just like when we started out in hybrid and high flex and remote, it kind of takes some time to get your brain around what it's going to be and then put things in place. So we will certainly take the inputs and restructure what the potential program will be. I packaged them together specifically because there are a lot of moving parts to this. We are going to have to meet with the association tomorrow to discuss. And the package is really, if we're going back full in person, do we have room to move off the expectation that teachers who are now going to receive full classrooms of students will still have to deliver the high flex instruction? So I know we're stuck on what exactly the remote will be, and we can redefine that a million times between now and our next meeting. But I think they are coupled together in terms of the expectations for staff.
At a high level, I think that's what we're looking for, is a more high level, consistent message, because I think it has not been consistent from the administration and from the principals. So I've been confused. I don't think I'm alone in being confused, and I would like more clarity at a high level the next meeting, and that's what I propose.
Okay. So that being said, we have a motion on the table to, at the time when we go to an all-in return to school, that the expectation will be that the teachers are no longer having to implement the high flex model, because we are at that point in all in school, and we are looking for more clarification and a fleshing of what the remote program will look like.
Yes.
Okay, so Annie has made that motion and Shannon has seconded it. Matt?
We have discussion though, now that there's a motion.
Yes, we can have more discussion now that there's a motion.
So I have a question. I want to make sure that, so we're voting to approve all of that without knowing what the fleshed out program is going to be. So my question on that is, because it affects my vote one way or the other. Does this process involve taking kids who have to remain remote for health or whatever reasons, taking them out of their current classrooms and placing them in a different scenario, out of their current classrooms that they've been in all year?
I think we can make, what's the word I'm looking for? We can create points during the day where the kids can be part of that classroom.
I guess that what I'm saying is, since we don't know what it is, I'm kind of looking for commitment on that. That's kind of the crux of the matter for me. Are these kids in their class or are they not in their class? Because that just makes a difference. I just want to clarify.
Can we get a commitment of at least that they'll at least be able to come in for like morning meeting and ending meeting, or morning meeting and at least one other point in the day?
I mean, if that's not the case, I'd rather just know. Like, I just want to make sure I know what I'm voting on.
So I would recommend you hold the vote tonight and we come back on the 16th with a refreshed plan.
Okay. If there's a motion on the table, are we allowed to just do that?
I don't see why not.
I
mean,
think
if you want to
that
go
the
ahead
heart of
and
the
have
motion was to get rid of the high flex model, which is a lot of work for teachers, right? So I think that we can go forward with it and ask for the, or not. I mean, I
mean, couldn't we just get rid of can we vote to get rid of the high flex model and then they propose the remote at the next meeting? We can either accept or
That's
reject
exactly
that?
what the motion says.
Yes. Okay, so let's just go forward with our vote. So we had Annie and we had Shannon. Matt, would you be a yes for getting rid of the high flex at the in-person point?
Yes.
Teresa?
No.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so we can get rid of the high flex and we look forward to seeing what the remote proposition will be. Okay, so now that I messed up, and while it was really helpful to hear from our school psychologist, I realized that that was a public comment. And we do indeed now need to reopen our public comment unless Pam has more to discuss before we do that?
I'm all
No.
set. Let me just get to the point let me reopen the chat bar.
Okay, so I will just remind everybody that the school committee has been in a meeting since 5 and it's getting late. But if you would like to weigh in with a brief public comment, we would welcome you to do so.
Sarah, I'm sorry, do we need to read
Read
the
from the
advocacy
chat.
letters on the teacher vaccination? Do we want to read that real quick so then we can close the meeting after?
Yeah, let's do that while people are thinking about whether or not it's really necessary to make a comment. Okay, we planned to have 2 advocacy letters going out tonight. We planned to have one in support of the DC revisiting the guidance for performing arts, but they beat us to the punch with that one. So that would be redundant and silly. So we do not need to send DC a letter on that. But we would like to send DC a letter in support of prioritizing teacher vaccinations. We realize that the President of the United States did actually make a statement about prioritizing teacher vaccinations today, which we fully support. But we do have a letter. Pam, do you have that to put up?
I do.
Okay, that would be awesome. Even though we're not really allowed to require the teachers before we move into any of these other phases, I think I can say with confidence that the whole school committee is very much in support of the teachers getting their vaccinations as soon as they are able to do so. I personally had a dream last night that I got a vaccination. It was quite lovely, but then I woke up and here we were in real life. I'm still just seeing the agenda. Pam, are you trying to put up that letter?
Oh, sorry, it's showing on my screen. Sorry. All right.
I mean, I could entertain people more with my stand-up routine.
Giving this one more shot here. Hold on. And it is not the performing arts vaccination letter. It's coming.
If you're calling in and your adorable child is talking on the phone, you might want to mute yourself. Oh, it's so small. Okay, so here we have a letter from the school committee saying that given the expectations that we return to school, we would really like to have teachers vaccinated as soon as possible.
Move to approve?
Awesome.
I'll second.
Okay. So is there any discussion?
Yeah, this is Ken. I'm going to just echo your comments that if people please mute if they are speaking with their children on the phone. And I would, if anything, simplify the language on this to just advocate for vaccination for teachers. There's discussions around whether the Johnson & Johnson is best, or I almost don't want to get into details. Let's just push for vaccination. So,
but you don't have any specific edits to make on this right now.
I would remove the items around that we're going to say we should use the J&J vaccine. I would just say there's still flexibility in how the vaccinations go forward. Let's work on getting vaccinations and not necessarily drive what vaccine or how or where. So my suggestion, take it or leave it.
I'm fine with that too.
I'm going to move the question.
Okay. Annie made the motion and Shannon seconded it. Annie, are you in favor?
I am.
Shannon?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a yes too. All right, so thanks everybody for that vaccination letter. I mean, hopefully, God, just fingers crossed we're going to get these teachers the vaccines they need. Is there anybody else who would like to make a public comment to help us close out the meeting before we end, as we always do with school committee comment? If you would like to, just put your name in the chat. I'm not seeing any names in the chat and it's been open for a little while, so I think maybe we're all set with public comment for tonight. Is there any school committee comment? Teresa?
Shocking. On the heels of the discussion about, potentially reaching out to families who are choosing to remain remote at elementary and stuff, we had talked about that at our last meeting with an outreach to families that were that had chosen to either homeschool or other choices, because we were going to be dealing with the spacing issues and stuff. And to my knowledge, that didn't happen. If it did, I don't know about it, but no families that I know were reached out to or contacted. And so I just want to say in public meeting that when we say we're going to do something, even if plans change in between, we should probably address that at some point, because people are expecting that outreach.
That's good. That's a good comment. Also, it's a moot point now, because if anybody wants to come back now that our distancing guidelines have been revised, there's definitely space for everybody, even if they've been homeschooling the whole time.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. If we say we're going to reach out to people, we should reach out to people. And just because I say I think people should reach out to people, though, that doesn't mean that the administrators have committed to do it. That's just me saying stuff. And
No,
I'm just...
we said we would do it, and I had put in a note to the school committee that we were going to hold on that until after February break, and we began our social distancing discussion, because I anticipated we would have a solution.
Okay.
And that was just before the break. So, yep. Sorry if I didn't clarify that.
It's okay. Any other school committee comment? Okay, so our next meeting is coming up in 2 weeks. And at that meeting, we will be hearing a little bit more about the elementary school remote option. And then families will be choosing between being all in person 5 days a week from is pre-K going to move to 5 days a week too?
I will check. They're on their own separate schedule of half days and different days. So
I was reminded today that
Allison if she anticipates any change in that schedule.
I was reminded today that we often say K to 12, but we're really a pre-K to 12 district. So I've been trying really hard to include pre-K in all my comments tonight. Soon we will be moving to a K to 5 all in-person program, which I think will make most people really happy. And then people who are choosing to stay remote, we will do our best to make sure that we have a program for those families that will be robust and will also allow them to have some kind of continued experience with their classroom who they've gotten to know so far this year, so that they feel like they are maintaining their connection with the community and their classroom. I think that's really important. And that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Annie? Are you in favor of adjourning the meeting? Annie already left. Matt?
I didn't, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I seconded it. I'm good.
Matt, Teresa?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.